hello. Hi, how's it going? How's everybody? Hi. Oh my goodness, I just realized our BGM is way too happy. Or I guess we could just turn off BGM when we read. But hello. How is everybody? How are you all? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good night, wherever you are, and welcome on in. Hi, it's Elias Stellaria here. I just had a nap, so Ohio? Question mark. Oh dear. Also, Skittles, arigato. Cute pants, Ailey's cute, and she's just Sun and denies it. Yeah. Skittles, arigato. No, I'm not Sun. Said every Sun ever. What are they supposed to say if they're not Sun? You know? What's the book trend? What book trend? Gomenne. Did someone just post a full-on cookie recipe? Yes. But with bananas. No, it's banana bread. Banana bread recipe. Yeah. And I was looking at the ingredients and I was like, what kind of cookies have bananas in? And I was like, that's doable, but like, interesting. Swipsa, arigato. Happy 17 months. Thank you. Sunelli is nice too. No, she's hecking not. Yeah. Skittles, arigato, commend, taxi, cute punk. Yeah. Wait, I commend. Squish the booba between the book. What? You have interest that... Oh, an old trend. Oh, cover... Guys, what kind of trends are you monitoring? I was trying to think of something wholesome, like, you know, reading. Oh my goodness gracious me. Like, wow. You guys need cleaner trends in your life. Aye. Non-wholesome trends. Heckin' punks. Oh my goodness gracious me. If the man is thirsty, just tell him how to drink water. Real. Wait. Yeah. Why couldn't the trend have just been reading books? I guess it's not as pretty. Oh dear. I have seen one though, where like, I think it was on Twitter, someone posted, like, look at all the books I've read. And it was like this stack of books that was like equal to like her height. And then at first people were like, woman. But then they were like, wait a second. And then they looked closely at the books. And they were like, well, that's just a heckin' pile of smut. You're just showing off your literature porn collection. This is a heckin' weird flex. Oh dear. A second. I don't know. I don't read at all. I'm a VTuber. You know, that does sound like a scary story. Indeed. Yeah, what's reading? The only thing I know how to read is by the super magical powers of being a VTuber. Am I allowed to read chat? Beyond that, my powers of reading are very limited by magic of VTubing. Yes, the same with counting. I can only count to 4. Unless I'm in very specific situations that really force me to understand. Like, yeah. No, I actually, genuinely, I didn't recognize any name. Like, I am blissfully unaware of the, like, erotic literature culture, okay? Like, no. I confirm the books I do read, okay? If I was to read, being a VTuber that shouldn't be allowed to read, but should I do read, I read light novels. And no, I only recognize, no, I didn't recognize it was smut. Guys, you're twisting the story I said here, okay? I said the comments were like, wait a second, and it was a bunch of comments calling them out, okay? Stop twisting my story, okay? I read light novels like a massive weeb, okay? I like reading light novels of animes that deserve more seasons but don't get them. Like, there was a phase of anime where they would just like... I felt like the anime itself was just an advert for the light novel, you know? So, yeah. I did it for things like, what is it? Classroom of the Elite, Overlord, 86. Oh my gosh, I needed to keep reading that. Oh my god, 86 is so good though. Holy guacamole. Oh, and then there's I'm a Spider So What. That deserved a better anime. Its quality dropped, unfortunately. And there was a lot more to that story to come. Yeah. Animes with one season typically. Hate it when no game, no life. I like went past the Tower Records building the other week and like, what'd you call it? It said no music, no life. And I was like, dang, making no game, no life reference right there, crying. I was like, oh my god, the sequel is finally here. Oh gosh. Also, wait a second. ちょっと待ってください. Blake, arigato. Thank you for the 100 biddies. Ellie Sun because she refuses to admit she's cute in a theater too. No, I just wouldn't lie to y'all. Yeah. Still love my Kamiyoshi because I'm done with predicting that I've had my Kamochi streams every day. And yes, you are cute, except to you silly goose. Never. I read a lot of Japanese works. I do. And recently, my TikTok has been... It's based on your location. So I'm getting a lot of videos that are in Japanese. And I'm using them to help me to learn. But specifically, these videos of this person talking to their dogs. And they're like, Wan-chan, nani sore? And then like points at a mess. And the dog's there looking like guilty AF, like. I'm just like. So it's yeah. It I don't know how much I'm gonna use that in day-to-day life, but it is nice to be able to like watch Japanese TikToks and comprehend them. Yeah, the dog side-eye they do, you know, like really guilty, like the guilty, wait, the guilty dog side-eye. I'm trying to think which ones are most, is it guilty dog side-eye? I mean, this is like the heckin' classic, like meme one where it's like, but that's not the one I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of like, it's like really, they look like this. Look at this. Look at that side eye. They just give this look of like, suspicious. Guilty of Wan-chan. Guilty. Yeah, golden retrievers are cute. I've noticed my feed has a lot of well, there's a lot of Shibas. It's like Shibas, Huskies, Corgis, golden retrievers, and Samoyeds. That's what I mostly get. So basically if I put on like a VPN, I can then swap over to like American TikTok. But for Japanese TikTok, I just, yeah. That and news articles. Shibas are very difficult. They're very sassy, you know? Oh, no. You know another one I've been watching? It's like learn Japanese through Minecraft. And it's someone just being like, meet there. And it's like, look across the water. There's a village. And in the village, there's a villager. Shall we go say hi to the villager? And it's like different levels of like N5, N4, N3. And it's like practicing listening through Minecraft, which I think is a really actually good way to learn. It's kind of like that more natural way of learning where if you learn the textbook way for languages, you start translating in your head, you know? Guilty is, okay, let me get the word right. Yuzai. Yuzai. Yeah, Yuzai. One-chan. Yuzai. Yuzai. Yeah, you end up like, if you learn the textbook way, you learn like, oh, this means dog. This means cat, you know? But you don't, the idea is you need to skip that step and look at something and instantly just think, wan-chan, neko-chan, you know? So like, I feel like learning languages is a whole different, like, it's very different from my typical learning method because you need to step back to how you'd be as a kid, you know? How you learn as a kid, you like point at things and you learn through immersion in a way, you know? That's apple, ringo, situations where you figure it out. And then from there, you build and learn the like nuances and the syntax and the grammar and all of that. Which means sees Ellie kawaii, you mean kawaii. Ne, kawaii ne. What light novels do you recommend for beginners to light novels? I would recommend going for any that you've seen the anime of, so that it helps, you know, if you're just starting, you kind of already know you're gonna like it, and you like that anime, and then you can continue that anime through the light novel. Yeah, I think that would be good. And then also, if you're not too accustomed with reading or a bit rusty at reading, it's very easy to imagine the characters because, yeah, it's like they're already in your head. Yeah. Learning one is when someone asks you some English word means in your mother tongue. I can't answer it immediately. That's fine though. Honestly, it's impressive when someone's multilingual. Them polyglots. Oh, impressive. Learning how to use the word instead of using the words plainly, like kitty instead of nice cat. Oh, like wan-chan over inu. And the same with like day-to-day scenarios, what's more natural to say, you know, so you don't sound like a textbook. Oh dear. Like, I'm guilty. Use watashi wa yuzai. Uso da yo. Iyada. No. Iyada. No. Oh my goodness. Yudai arigato. Code PSA. We now have another friend confirmation of IRL being cute. You cannot deny it. We have consensus. Cute Gushi just says, oh, Elliot's cute. Yeah, but no, they're gonna say that though, you know? They're gonna say it. They're gonna say it if you ask them, hey, she's cute, isn't she? And they're gonna just say yes out of the sheer pressure. Like British woman shouting no in Japanese accent. No! Oh no! No! Sorry, I was shouting in katakana. you must, you know, there's English and then there's katakana. So you just learn the katakana way, and then boom, that's the Japanese version. It's very interesting though, because people may not understand English, but then if you say it in katakana, then it's like, oh, so desu ka. Ah, karaoke instead of karaoke. Instead of, oh, coffee. Instead of coffee. Also, Maho Caro, arigato. Happy 14 months. Thank you. Ellie, kawaii. Yeah. No. Ice cream. Drink. McDonald's. Karaoke. It was the first thing that came to my head. And Echo, arigato, baby goose. Thank you. And Skittles, arigato. Sorry, Tax, you're adorable. Admit it, you punk. Never. Yeah, I looked at the suggestions you guys sent at Holy Guahimole. The fact that one of you put me admitting I'm cute in there, real. Ah, gosh. McDonald's is just interesting in general, because it does have different... It's not just Japan that pronounces it differently, you know? Some places call it Mackies or McD's or or McDonald's, you know? Like, certain countries may have different shortenings of the word. Macca's! We're off to Macca's, me! Get a burger from Macca's! Yeah, Australia calls it Macca's, right? And yeah, McD, McDo. Yeah. Macca's reminds you of maracas. They should do that. They should give maracas in the Happy Meals. Yeah. Oh my gosh. So my friend that's staying with me, she is currently out, but I've asked her to bring me a fami chiki on her way back. So we shall see. What we do have today is scary stories. Ooh. So I found some online I do want to read as well. So we're gonna read some. I don't know if they're any good, but we're gonna look at true crime. And I found this thing where it says 50 great true crime stories. So we shall see if they're any good. And yeah. It should be. True crime is always fun and spooky because it's true. Let's see. Let's go for this one. Oh dear, these are gonna be heckin'. Okay, so the following stories are listed under true crime stories. Okay, and the first one we're gonna read is the Truck Stop Killer from October 24th, 2012. What the heck you mean? Wait, no. Wait, no. No, it's not. We're not gonna read it. Are these all from different... Okay, they're from different websites. Okay. We're not going to read the Truck Stop Killer because the Truck Stop Killer story wants me to have a subscription. And that's a real horror. Yes. So we're going to see... We're gonna find one that doesn't want... Okay, let's do this one. This one's called The Poet from 2021. Okay. Is this under true? That doesn't seem like a real place. Oh, it is a real place. My apologies, Kansas. You just have a city that doesn't sound real. They have a city called Wichita. And I was like, ha, a place for witches. That's funny. That sounds fake. But it's actually a city in South Central Kansas. Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. Okay. Late one humid night in Wichita, Kansas, in June 1977, Ruth Finley, a 47-year-old telephone company employee and mother of 2 grown sons, was startled by the ringing of her phone. Which is real, because I feel that. I also get startled by the ringing of my phone. But she had just enjoyed a traumatic day. That afternoon, her husband Ed had collapsed from an apparent heart attack after working in their backyard. Now Ed lay in a hospital bed as doctors searched for a conclusive diagnosis, while Ruth tried to shake off the unease she felt at the unfamiliar experience of being alone in her house at night. Now listening to the radio didn't provide much help. The airwaves filled with the news of the BTK Strangler, Wichita's first serial killer, who had been stalking the city's residents for the past 3 years, killing 7 people. Ruth switched to easy listening instead. The ring of her telephone pierced the music's mellow tones, instantly filling Ruth with apprehension. A phone call this late at night could only mean bad news from the hospital. "Hello?" she answered hesitantly. But instead of a nurse or doctor, Ruth heard an unfamiliar male voice on the line. "Is this Ruth Smock from Fort Scott, Kansas?" The question startled her. Smock was Ruth's maiden name, and she hadn't lived in Fort Scott for decades. "Yes, it is," she answered. "I know all about that night." Hearing the low and ominous tone, Ruth didn't need to ask the man which night he meant. Confirming her fear, she listened in shock as the caller began reading out loud from an October 15th, 1946 article from the Fort Scott KS Tribune. Branded on both thighs by a hot flat iron, apparently by a sex maniac, Ruth Smock, 16-year-old Fort Scott high school girl, was resting today at the home of her parents, following an attack upon her early last night. That night in 1946, Ruth had just returned to her rooming home from buying groceries when she heard the screen door open behind her. Suddenly she felt herself grabbed behind by a tall man. The intruder wore dirty bib overalls and looked about 50 years old. And struggling to break free, Ruth jabbed the man in the eyes with her thumbs. "I'll fix you so no one will look at you again," came his enraged reaction. The man shoved a rag doused in chloroform over Ruth's mouth and she began to fade into unconsciousness. And when her final hazy image before passing out was a man heating a flat iron on the stove. When she awoke, she had first-degree burns on both thighs and blood from scratches on her face, arms, and legs. Now, on the phone, 31 years later, the male caller asked Ruth if she still wore her brand. "I don't know what you're talking about," Ruth lied. Her head swam with confusion. Why was this stranger bringing up that terrible incident from so long ago? The man told Ruth he worked for a construction company that was tearing down old houses in Fort Scott, and he'd found a number of yellowing newspapers in the walls. The article about Ruth was among them, and if she didn't give him money, he said he would spread the news of her teenage attack. "I know where you work." Alarmed, Ruth slammed the phone down. Her temples throbbed and she felt an abrupt need to sleep, and dragging herself to bed, she fell almost immediately into a 10-hour slumber. Ed remained in the hospital for another week. He hadn't suffered a heart attack. It turned out, but rather a holdover injury from a car accident from the previous year. While Ed lay in the hospital bed, Ruth spent fretful nights alone in the house, waiting with dread for another call. None came. Ed returned home, and Ruth did her best to put the man's threats out of her mind. Life in Finley's modest one-story wood frame house at 8215 East Indianapolis Street resumed its familiar rhythm. That's part one. Ooh. Okay, let me move on to part two. They're in like sections, so. Yeah. Skittles arigato apology tax law does sound fake. I mean, it does sound like a fake place. We always take all of these stories with a pinch of salt, okay? I always do that when I hear these like true crime stories, also because they're usually from quite a while ago. So, okay. This one does have newspaper articles, but we'll see. Later that summer, Ruth was sitting in her office. She worked as a secretary at Southwestern Bell Telephone Company when an envelope landed on her desk. Her name was scrawled in a messy hand across the top. Opening the envelope, Ruth's stomach clenched as a yellowed newspaper clipping fell to her desk. Picking up the clipping, she was aghast to find it was the Fort Scott Tribune headline from 1946. Sex maniac uses flat irons in branding local high school girls. Frightened and unsure what to do, she tore the headline into pieces and tossed them into a waste paper basket. Throwing away the headline didn't make Ruth's trouble disappear, however. She picked up the phone at home to hear the same unidentified male voice repeatedly over the next several months, though Ruth would hang up before he could say any more than her name. And during the same period, Ed answered the phone on multiple occasions to hear only a dial tone at the other end. Now, Ruth and Ed valued nothing more than normalcy. Normalcy? I'm not sure about, how do you pronounce this word? Normalcy and normalcy? Normalcy. Normal. Normalcy. Okay. They valued nothing more than normalcy. They were the children of poverty-stricken farmers and homemakers in rural Kansas who had struggled to survive during the Great Depression. Their parents were harsh disciplinarians who taught that emotions were to be repressed, tears were forbidden, and calling attention to oneself was practically criminal. Ruth and Ed's fondest wish was for neighbors and friends to view them as modest, responsible people, polite, and ordinary. This was a time before the internet, guys. So I can see how the sort of view of the neighborhood had a much higher value back then. Now, Ruth had sparkling eyes, short brown hair, an attractive square face, and a muted but respectable manner of dress. Ed, an accountant at a construction firm, had a looming frame, a shiny bald head, and plain, friendly features. Now, Ruth's hobby was ceramics and Ed's was painting, and their creativity was important to them. In another life, Ruth and Ed might have been artists, but nothing in their hard Scrabble upbringings had allowed for that possibility. In August 1977, Ruth was window shopping in downtown Wichita when a man popped out of a crowded crosswalk and fell into stride beside her. Ruth barely noticed. She might have been thinking instead how increasingly hollowed out the downtown shopping district felt. As store after store went out of business or relocated to one of the malls on the outskirts of town, Ruth and Ed both worked downtown, and each day it seemed to them that fewer of the city's nearly 300,000 residents walked the sideways in the city's core. Suddenly, Ruth's reverie was broken. "You've done such a good job working this week," the man said. "You can take the weekend off." Now Ruth, startled, looked over. She took in as many details as she could. The man was in his late 40s, 5'9", and skinny, with a plaid sports shirt, jeans, and white canvas shoes. His black hair was graying at the temples. You work for the phone company, don't you? Ruth did her best to ignore the man, but he persisted. What do you do there? You an operator? And when Ruth didn't answer, the man told her he'd recently won some money in Las Vegas. Would you like to go to Las Vegas sometime? Ruth held her silence and kept walking. Switching conversational gears, the man announced, the camera reflects the true quality of one's soul. And Ruth was more annoyed than scared. I'm waiting for my husband, she said pointedly. Are you married? Are you still married? When Ruth failed to respond, the man's tone grew menacing. I like your face. I'll see you again. You can count on that. Some people's fantasies are other people's nightmares. And Ruth was deeply unsettled by these last words. Is this the man who's been calling me? She wondered. When Ed came out to meet her, Ruth told him about the creep who had followed her. And Ed assured her it was probably just a guy looking to pick someone up. And Ed's evaluation seemed correct. Ruth saw nothing more of the man for almost a year. But in 1978, she was once again shopping downtown when, as she passed an alleyway between the stores, she felt someone reach out and grab her wrist. It was the man from the previous summer. Ruth, get back here, you stupid bitch, and talk to me, he cried. And Ruth yanked free and dashed across the street into Macy's, where she rode the escalator to the 5th floor before realizing where she was. When her breathing finally settled, she called Ed and asked him to pick her up immediately. Now, when Ed met her at Macy's, Ruth told him about the assault. She also told him for the first time about the harassing phone calls. Ed, deeply worried, said he would contact the police. He went to the station and filed a report. But the police took no follow-up action. Now that October, Ruth received in the mail an otherwise unmarked envelope with her name scrawled on the front in tall, black letters. Uneasiness gripped her as she sat at her kitchen table with a cup of coffee and opened the envelope. Inside, Ruth found a single sheet of paper with the words, "Fuck you, fuck the police, and fuck the telephone company," scribbled messily at the top. "Give me money," the writer threatened below, "or you will be hurt." A frightened Ruth jumped to her feet and paced the floor until Ed came home. "This is bad," Ed told Ruth after he read the letter. He insisted they make another visit to the police. And on November 6th, Ruth and Ed drove to the Wichita Police Department headquarters, where they were directed to the Criminal Investigations Division on the 5th floor. Lieutenant Bernie Drautsky, a seasoned Boulding detective whose experience as an officer stretched back 34 years, greeted the couple in his office. Normally, Drautsky's division would not handle a case like Ruth's, but the BTK Strangler, now 3 years into his reign of terror over Wichita, was also known for sending threatening letters, and the police were taking no chances. I need some water. Ruth told Drautsky about the menacing phone calls and the 2 times she had been approached on the street. She had no enemies that she knew of, Ruth said. She and Ed were empty nesters living on a quiet street, and they were friendly with all their neighbors, nor could she think of anyone she had wronged in the past. Although he didn't say so out loud, Drautsky was underwhelmed by Ruth's report. His caseload was filled with far more violent crimes, and not to mention the dozens of BTK tips he'd received every week, and he simply didn't have time to pursue such a seemingly minor case. And the following week, another letter appeared in Finley's mailbox, this time demanding that Ruth pay the writer $100. "I can tell if anybody is watch me," the letter warned. "Don't be a dumb bitch again and blow this. I will try to be your friend, but when you are a dumb bitch, I don't like you. This time, you talk to me when I call you soon." The writer finished off with a crude poem. "Wherever you go on water and land, you still got to pay, or I tell about your brand. I'm smart and know things to do. You talk to people I despise, like police lieutenant and telly spies." Now Ruth brought the letter to Lieutenant Drowsky at the police headquarters, as more letters began appearing in Finley's mailbox. Ed delivered them to Drowsky, who passed them on to the police laboratory for fingerprinting. The letters grew more indecipherable over time, a jumble of misspellings and abbreviations and rare tongue-twisting words like consentaneous, prolegomenomus, and rhodomontade, or made-up words like sanchused or psychosthenia. And Ruth began typing up clean copies of the letter for Drowsky to make them easier to decode. The writer talked frequently, wanting to see Ruth's brands, and he seemed to find her burns fascinating. The phone calls continued as well, but when Ed answered, he was usually only greeted by the dial tone, the caller having hung up, or by a male voice that asked Ruth, and then hung up. But the calls finally stopped, and Ruth and Ed became hopeful that Ruth's stalker had moved on. Also, hello, welcome on in anybody that's popped in mid-story. Oh dear. So, on November 21st, 1978, a cold, wet, and misty day, Ruth spent her lunch break running errands downtown. She wore a red print blouse, a black jacket, and black pants. And as she crossed the North Market Street after leaving a greeting card shop, her path was suddenly blocked by a blue-green 1964 Chevrolet Bel Air that screeched to the curb. The only other person she could see was an elderly woman walking far up the street. Ruth froze in horror as the same man who'd confronted her twice previously leapt from the car. This time he wore black frame glasses, a jean jacket, and a sweater. "Have you got my money?" he asked, delivering a sharp kick to Ruth's shin. And as she folded over in pain, the man grabbed her and shoved her into the car's tattered, junk-filled back seat. He climbed in next to her and slammed the door. In the driver's seat sat a man swigging a bottle from a paper bag. Ruth's attacker called him Buddy, and Ruth looked frantically for a means to escape, but the door handle on her side was broken. On the floor, she saw a gas can, pieces of concrete, chains, and rags. And the car's rear left window was covered in plastic, and the torn-up dashboard was crisscrossed with white tape. Now, Ruth's abductor told her to give him her purse, and pouring through it, he found Ruth's money and her safe deposit key. "We've struck rich," he cried. But his mood turned grim as he came across Drowsky's business card, which he showed to Buddy, and then cursing, he picked up a chunk of concrete and slammed it into Ruth's head. "You damn stupid bitch," he said. Dazed, Ruth collapsed in her seat. The car sped off, headed northwest, the two men jabbering back and forth so rapidly that Ruth found it difficult to follow their conversation. At one point, Buddy stopped at the Twin Lakes shopping center and yabbered on about Sears's inability to properly fix his car. "We'll get rid of her, but not here," her abductor said at another time, sending an added jolt of fear through an already terrified Ruth. She thought of the mace can she had hidden in her purse, but she felt too scared to reach for it. Now outside the car, the weather grew increasingly colder as the afternoon turned to dusk and dusk turned to night. And Buddy continued driving a seemingly random route around the city. "Do you like beer?" her abductor leered. "We'll get some beer and have a party, and I'll be real nice to you." And finally, 4 hours into her ordeal, Ruth summoned the courage to speak. "I have to pee," she said, but the men just laughed, and Ruth forced herself to gag. "I'm going to throw up if I don't go to the restroom," she said. "You won't do that," Ruth's abductor replied. But he told Buddy to stop next to a small park near West 21st Street and Selena. Before the men let Ruth out of the car, they made her remove her shoes and sweater so she wouldn't run away. "This is going to be fun," Ruth's abductor said as he escorted her into the park. "I'll watch you and you'll watch me. Doesn't that sound like fun?" And Ruth, walking next to him, dug her hand into her purse until she found her can of mace. When they reached the little lake, the man let go of Ruth's arm, saying he would pee first. And as he unzipped his fly, Ruth withdrew her can of mace and pressed the nozzle, and the man collapsed coughing as Ruth bolted off barefoot into the park. Spotting a large bush behind which she could hide, Ruth crouched, fearful and shivering, thinking she could hear the man tracking her. "You'll freeze if we leave you here," she heard the man shout. "Come get your shoes and your coat and we won't bother you anymore." And though her feet were turning numb from the cold, Ruth stayed crouched in the dark until long after the man stopped shouting. And when her discomfort grew overwhelming, she scrambled to the top of a small rise. And looking down, she saw no sign of the men's car. Had they finally driven off? Now exiting the park, Ruth dashed into a liquor store across the street. "Someone's after me," she told the store's owner, between gasping breaths, and the owner immediately called the police. "Please, can you call my husband too?" Ruth asked him. When Ed picked up the phone and heard a strange man on the line, he demanded to speak with Ruth. Now Ed had spent past hours feeling panicked and helpless after Ruth had been reported missing from work. Now on the phone, Ruth reassured him that she was out of harm's way and that the store owner was helping her. But Ed remained wary. By the time he had arrived at the liquor store 30 minutes later, the police had already taken Ruth to headquarters. Ed found Ruth hunched in a chair at the station, her eyes and cheeks red from crying, her hand still gripping her mace can, and though she was doing her best to project an aura of calm, her mother had always taught her that tears were a waste of time. And Ruth remained seated as Lieutenant Drowsky told Ed that the kidnappers had stolen her $315 paycheck and a $100 U.S. savings bond. Not wishing to further alarm Ruth and Ed, Drowsky kept private his growing suspicion that Ruth's tormentor might be the BTK strangler after all. Overlaps of key words between the BTK's letters and the letters received by Ruth had the police fretting that Ruth might be the killer's next victim. The next day, Detective Richard Zortman drove to the park where Ruth had escaped her kidnappers. He found Ruth's shoes and sweaters and traced her footprints, but was unable to recover any additional clues. Zortman and Drowsky then ran a check of every 1964 Chevy Bel Air in the city, doggedly locating every vehicle, but no plausible suspects emerged from their work. Now, for the next 5 weeks, detectives in the downtown area threw a blanket of protection around Ruth during her lunch hours, but they observed no suspicious activity. Detective George Anderson, with Ruth and Ed in tow, drove 155 miles east to Fort Scott for a 2-day investigation into Ruth's teenage assault there, hoping to uncover a possible suspect. Ruth examined all the mugshots on file at the Fort Scott Police Department, and later that month, Anderson returned to Fort Scott for another 2-day visit, but neither trip provided any leads regarding the possible identity of Ruth's tormentor. Now, looking to establish contact with the subject, Lieutenant Drowsky participated in a talk show sponsored by KEYN Radio. He described for the audience Ruth's strange tale. As the show progressed, Ruth and 3 detectives listened in on the studio telephone line to all incoming callers. None of the voices sounded to Ruth like that of the man who'd been stalking her. Now, during this same period, Ruth had found herself plagued by daily headaches and wrenching stomach cramps, and while she knew the symptoms might be psychosomatic, she never considered requesting help. Her mother had taught her that asking for help was a sign of weakness, something to be avoided at all cost. And Ruth also hated to be an object of gossip or speculation. In her world, calling special attention to oneself was tantamount to a sin. Oh dear, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Oh. Now, Ruth's discomfort only grew in December, when Drowsky received a letter from her attacker, accusing the detective of, quote, protecting a whore from death. And Drowsky, for his part, was enraged. He felt that Ruth was a good, kind woman, and his inability to find her attacker was proving a source of deep frustration. And meanwhile, Ruth and Ed's nights reflected their new reality. While Ruth slept, or rather, attempted to sleep, in their bed, Ed would drag his 12-gauge shotgun into the backyard, and there he would lie behind the bushes and wait for hours, fantasizing all the while that Ruth's attacker would make an appearance. Oh, how are you finding the story so far, guys? Is it okay? Also, Skittles, arigato. Sorry, Tux, hydration is important. I gotta keep my throat okay. I don't know why it gets so dry so easily. It's quite a scary story. Okay, we shall continue. So as the weather warmed up and spring turned to summer, the letters for Ruth kept piling up. The words are written in rhyming verse. Ed called the killer, the writer, the poet. And the messages were violent, enraged, grotesquely sexual. The whore bore her guilt in her bed of slime from selling her ass and not charging a dime, slept with strangers in evil bed, enraged demon hunters, so blood was red. All bitches should keep their names and faces secret, ... And in July 1979, the letters stopped. However, Ruth and Ed again grew hopeful that the poet had moved on. They even felt comfortable enough to plan their annual summer trip to a dude ranch in Colorado. Ruth wanted a new pair of jeans for the trip, and so on August 13th, after work, she told Ed she was heading to Dillard's department store at the Town East Mall. Now, Ed felt nervous about Ruth venturing out by herself, but Ruth said she'd be fine. Now, by the time Ruth walked out of Dillard's with her new jeans, the summer dusk had settled in, casting shadows over the enormous, nearly deserted mall parking lot. Ruth, aware of her vulnerability, hurried to her vehicle, eyes scanning the lot for potential danger. She was almost to her 1979 Oldsmobile two-door when she heard a male voice call, "Hey, Ruth. I didn't know you were going to make this so easy." And she turned around and recognized with horror the man who had kidnapped her 1 year earlier. Now, Ruth ran for the car, but before she could unlock the door, the man came up from behind and grabbed her wrist and then shoved her head against the window. "Get in," he ordered, saying he wanted to take her to a bridge near August Airport Road. He threw a brown paper shopping bag through the partially open rear window onto the back seat. The bag held a clothesline robe, white tape, a red bandana, and a half-empty bottle of wine. "We'll go to a nice little place where it says 'keep out,'" he said. Now Ruth broke free and tried to step around the car, and the man withdrew an 8-inch boning knife and stabbed her, twice in the back and once in the side. On the third stab, the knife struck in Ruth's flesh, and she felt the man lose his grip. And she ran to the passenger side seat, slammed the door, and began rolling up the window. Now, to her horror, Ruth saw the man reaching in after her. His hand got stuck in the window as he withdrew it, and his brown cotton glove remained stuck between the window and the doorframe. And Ruth drove off with the glove still dangling there, and in her rearview mirror, she could just make out the man staring after her in the twilight. Now, Ruth felt woozy after she turned into the parking lot into the street's steady traffic. And when she stopped at the red light, she finally noticed a burning pain in her left side. Looking down, she saw the knife still jutting from her side. Her energy was slipping, and blood from her wounds was dripping onto her car seat. Now, at the corner of Douglas and Rock Road, Ruth spotted a gas station and pulled sharply into its driveway, stopping in front at the station's payphone. Staggering from the car, she dialed 268-4181, the only police number she knew. And at police headquarters, Al Themisich, Drowski's boss, picked up the phone and Ruth began to introduce herself. "I know who you are," Themisich cut her off. "What's going on?" "I've been stabbed." Ooh, it does include like these photos, by the way. They have a Wichita Police Department Laboratory Section Preliminary Case Report image. Looks like this. Yeah. It seems to show aggravated assault stabbing of Ruth Finley, 49, female. Yeah. Fascinating, right? Fascinating. Okay. On to the next section. An alarmed Thimsich said he would send over an officer immediately. Ruth, however, was frightened that her attacker might show up at the gas station, and after hanging up the phone, she returned to her car and, feeling increasingly weak, drove the 5 minutes back to her house, certain that at any minute her attacker might pull behind her. She was so distracted and in so much pain that she almost missed her street. Now, in the meantime, Captain Dimsich called Ed and told him the shocking news. And when Ruth pulled to the curb, a panicked Ed was waiting in front of the house. Ruth nearly fainted as she opened the car door, and she urged Ed to remove the knife from her side, but Ed feared that would increase the bleeding. Ed knows. As gently as possible, he moved Ruth into the passenger seat, and then he jumped behind the wheel and sped for St. Joseph's Hospital. Now, Lieutenant Drowsky met Finley's at the hospital, where he found Ruth lying quietly on the emergency room bed. When he asked what happened, Ruth lifted her body to show him a long knife sticking from her side. Drowsky whistled at the size. And a minute later, as he discussed the situation with the emergency room doctor, the knife slid from Ruth's body and clattered onto the ground. The doctors found deep gashes on Ruth's back and left arm and a 2-inch deep wound where the knife had been lodged. Any deeper, and the knife, the doctor said, would have killed her. Now, after the doctors sutured the wound, Drowsky commandeered a nearby room in which to station a guard, while Ruth recovered. Now, that night, the local TV news station blared the story of Ruth's stabbing, while the Wichita's Eagle Beacon featured the headline, "Woman Stabbed Resisting Abduction." And a follow-up article in the Eagle Beacon included a police sketch of the suspect and a warning that he was extremely dangerous. And Drowsky told the newspaper that the suspect had been writing letters to at least one other woman in the Wichita area. Now, Ruth remained in hospital for 9 days. The day after she was released, a nurse told police that a man fitting the description of Ruth's attacker had visited the nurse's station to inquire about her. Now, an alarmed Drowsky was positive this was their suspect. Now, he stayed at the Finley's house for the next 48 hours in case the man showed up, but to no avail. Now, that September, Ed hit upon the idea of trying to contact Ruth's attacker by leaving messages in the newspaper. In the classified section of the Eagle Beacon, he placed an ad that read, "Poet, tell me what I owe you, RSF. Local reporters quickly picked up on the nickname The Poet, employing it from then on in their coverage of Ruth's case. And even the suspect appropriated the name, and he began signing his letters The Poet. And he also began communicating with Ed through the classifieds. To RSF, the price of my service, to stay alive, can now be settled at 5. Although he never shared any personal information, to the poet it seemed a little more than a game. He called Ruth the 7th and hardest to find, raising further speculation that he might be the BTK strangler. Now, in October, the Eagle Beacon revealed the poet had been sending in newspaper taunting letters for the past 6 months. If any had a brain, no one would have pain. Good or evil, my secret shall not be known. I unnoticed go my way. I may just prosper for one day. The poet wrote. In an apparent reference to BTK, he warned, make sure you don't confuse the executioners again. And the paper also printed another composite sketch of the poet, resulting in 25 calls from local citizens who said they had seen or knew the man in the sketch. Ruth's story had transfixed all of Wichita, eclipsing, for the moment, even BTK. Now, in response to the public outpouring, the police redoubled their efforts to catch the poet, combing through files for any suspects who had committed kidnappings or knifings, and they also surrounded Ruth with 8 undercover officers while she shopped at Town East, and they wired her for sound whenever she walked in potentially risky areas. Still, they failed to turn up any plausible suspects. Now, meanwhile, the poet appeared to be stalking the Finleys' house. One morning, Ruth found a letter from the poet on their front porch, and at night, loud noises seemed to emanate from their garage. A fucked-up childhood causes anger and hate, the poet wrote. Players of games are forced to wait. Now, with no other leads, the police decided to try hypnosis, setting up 2 sessions between Ruth and Dr. Donald Schrag, a Wichita psychologist and police consultant who had also worked on the BTK case. and Ruth found the experience of being hypnotized wonderfully calming. And though she grew agitated when recalling her kidnapping, repeatedly yelling, "I want out of the car, I want out of the car," a few new details about her attack emerged from her sessions. However, the poet has serious emotional and mental problems, Dr. Schrag announced. It's likely he's had psychological treatment and possibly been in state institution. He added that the poet's letters showed signs of high intelligence. Ooh, it's not a scary story? That's okay. I think it's more like, it's a form of scary. But I feel like scary comes in many forms, you know? When it comes to true crime, it's more like oh, this happened? Oh, how scary. So, but I also appreciate the modern day technologies that have helped security in modern day. You know, because back then it would have been terrifying because there are a lack of resources that police can use or anyone can use. You know, like, yeah. Now in January 1980. Oh wait, no, we should wait for the ads. We'll wait for the ads. The ads are just running, so we can take a little mini break in the story. But yeah, there was a lack of, there's ads on Twitch, so I'd be multi-streaming. Yeah, the ads run once an hour. It's just to prevent pre-rolls, and it's a way to keep the ads at a minimum. But yeah, what I find is a lot of these like true crime horror is always from this sort of time period, because it seemed a lot easier for people to be getting away with these kind of crimes. There's like a lot of like stories of all these serial killers and stuff, and it's the same with like England and whatnot, and I feel like it's probably the same in most countries where like they can't get away with these kind of things nowadays. You've got fingerprints, DNAs, you've got like CCTV, you've got the internet, like, you know, and that's why a lot of these stories come from this older time where, yeah, you just had to, everything was very analog. Like, it's I feel like, yeah, if I was to live through a time period, I would not want to live in these sort of time periods, because it's scary what they can get away with, you know? Yeah. Oh, Skittles, arigato. Before I forget, medication reminder. Thank you. Arigato. I just ate a voice mint, so I'll have that first. I mean, me as a Asian woman, put me back in the heck in 1950s, 60s. No, I'm good. I don't think I'd have done well, guys. I think I would have struggled, and we go back even any time further behind any time in the past, I'd have been so heckin' cooked. Oh dear, like the nostalgia of what? I'm reading this from an online this website. It's from a thing called Truly Adventurous, but this is then found for another site, which brings together a bunch of true story, 50 great true crime stories, true crime articles to read online. You want some pictures? I mean, the pictures from back then are kind of lacking, but here. We can put some on the screen. The main ones that they have are these two. You know? And you want the sketch as well, I assume. Here's the sketch. Does this help with the immersion? We have the stuff. I assume it helps. Oh, welcome back from Ad Jail, guys. Just realized I need glasses. Now we're immersed. Yeah. Yeah. It does help with the immersion. Does it make it scarier? Is it scarier with the images? I assume so. Okay. Yay. You've noticed my YouTube? Oh, thank you. Yeah. You'll find all my VODs on there. Okay, let's see. In January 1980, Reef's case was taken over by Captain Mike Hill, while Drowsky was promoted to vice and organized crime. Now, Drowsky and his wife had grown close with Ruth and Ed over the previous 2 years, and the two couples frequently socialized. Their shared Republican politics and dry senses of humor meshed easily and well. The dark-haired Captain Hill was built like a football player and had the previous year taken over the department's Special Investigations section, which was spearheading Ruth's case. He also put in long hours on the BTK Strangler case. Now, unlike Drowsky, Hill had no personal connection with either of the Finleys, and so, as he reviewed the files on the poet, he couldn't help but wonder if Ruth or Ed might be the culprit. But he quickly changed his mind after reading the medical report, which established firmly that Ruth couldn't have stabbed herself with such force at an angle. Now, meanwhile, Drowsky and the other detectives assured Hill that devoted Ed would never hurt his wife. And the poet quickly took notice of the change in command, writing a letter to Hill that began with the line, "There was once a captain who had an asshole for a heart." Now, on Christmas Eve, the Finleys' phone lines were cut for a second, leading Southwest and Bell to bury the replacement lines underground. And Ruth and Ed fitted their back gate with an alarm system, while Captain Hill installed a surveillance camera in their backyard and assigned detectives to watch the monitors 24 hours a day in the Finleys' dining room. Ruth feeling guilty that the detectives had drawn such a dull assignment, though the $1,200 in overtime pay the officers earned each weekend made up for the boredom, plied them with homemade desserts. She also entertained the detectives by reading aloud from the poet's letters, though it gave her a powerful headache to do so. Now, on January 25th, 1980, Ruth reported an afternoon phone call at work from the poet, who had told her he'd left a surprise for her in the office lobby. Now, when the detectives arrived, they found a 12-inch butter knife wrapped in a red bandana in the lobby's phone booth. 2 witnesses reported seeing a man at the phone booth who resembled the police sketch of the poet. "Shut your eyes and think of the 12-inch blade," the poet wrote Ruth. "Will you remember the hole it made? Dream of me and obey my commands. Think of me with a knife in my hands." Now, the frequency of the poet's letters increased over the following weeks. On February 19th, he sent Ruth a chilling Valentine's message that read, "Here's to you, a tender Valentine, red with blood and tied with twine, nothing too much for a Valentine, gone here by whim of mind." And the strip of red bandana was included in the envelope along with a letter that said, "I'm about ready to start telling you about now. It will just be your word against mine." And Ed drove Ruth to and from work every day as a measure of protection. And by this point, the police had investigated over 300 people, but they still had no plausible suspects. Frustrated with playing a passive role, detectives developed a risky plan to draw the poet out into the open. Now, they would put Ruth in a bulletproof vest and let her stroll around downtown Wichita, shadowed by 6 to 8 plainclothes officers. Now, more detectives would cruise the streets in unmarked cars, but the elaborate ruse failed to turn up any suspects. Disguised as a wino detective, Richard Vinro then spent the next several weeks lurking downtown in a futile attempt to spot the poet on the street. Damn, they're really bad at catching this guy. Oh my goodness. Now, local media remained riveted by Ruth's case. On the 4th of July, the story broke nationally with a detailed and remarkably accurate story in the National Enquirer titled, "She's Living a Nightmare, the Victim of a Crazed Tormentor." And that included an interview with Captain Hill. Apparently, Ruth's story needed no exaggeration to enthrall the Enquirer's regular readership. And the poet continued his barrage of Wichita's businesses, sending out more than 50 letters in a 6-month period. One letter told a local mortuary to contact Ruth about its services, saying she would be requiring them soon, and letters to the gas and electric company instructing them to turn off the Finley's utilities, and the health department was told that Ruth was spreading a venereal disease. A construction company was solicited to tear up the Finley's driveway, and the DMV was asked to confiscate Ruth's license because of her hazardous and dangerous driving habits. And Ruth's bank was ordered to transfer all her money, and a local florist received a $5 bill with the request that one black flower be sent to Ruth. Still, seeking a break in the case, the police grew innovative, installing a camera camouflaged in a birdhouse in the Finley's backyard. 2 vice and narcotics officers were given mind-numbing assignments of combing through all of the Kansas gas and electric company letters to see if any other envelopes bore similar handwriting to the poet's, a task that consumed 4 days. Sorry, I'm eating this like little candy. Sorry, let me just finish this. It's to help my throat. Okay. Let me just... Okay. Where did we get to? Let's see. Okay. Lieutenant Drowsky also sent copies of the poet's letters to Dr. Murray S. Myron, a prominent psycholinguist at the Syracuse University who had gained national attention for his work on the Son of Sam case in 1977. Dr. Myron wrote a profile stating the poet was clearly and severely psychotic, virulently pathological, schizophrenic, extremely dangerous, a wily and elusive quarry, and, quote, a loner. He also said that while the style and pathology of the poet and the BTK Strangler were highly similar, he did not believe that they were the same person. Yet the BTK speculation continued to be fed by the poet's repeated references to a fox he had killed, an apparent allusion to Nancy Jo Fox, BTK's most recent victim, slain in December 1977, mingled with blood and tears from my stormy life. The poet wrote Ruth at around this time, tortured oppression needs death to end the strife, with no repentance I will be free, locked in her grave I will return to being me. And at the beginning of June, Ruth received a letter from the poet postmarked from Oklahoma City, and the first letter to be sent out from outside Wichita. Captain Hill grew hopeful when the Oklahoma police then received an anonymous call from a woman regarding a man who resembled the poet. Police discovered the man had worked in Wichita and had been fired from his job about 7 months earlier, after which he had moved to a trailer west of Oklahoma City. His psychological profile also matched that of the poet. Hill and his team were thrilled. Surely they had the man. The suspect was flown back to Wichita for a police lineup at the Sedgwick County Courthouse. But Ruth, after careful consideration, declared that he was the wrong person, despite the physical similarities. And the poet's harassment continued at a frenzied pace. He left an ice pick and a bottle of urine at the Finley's French port, followed by a bag of feces. He left Molotov cocktails and broken glass on the Finley steps. He broke the locks on their gate and sliced their garden hose, and he left firecrackers and cigarettes, hair, matches, and trash in their mailbox. And Ruth found a rock wrapped in the poet's signature red bandana in their backyard, along with a pair of wire cutters. 'Twas the night before Xmas, and all through the house Ruth wasn't stirring. You're as quiet as a mouse. Your stocking was tied around your neck with care, and I hoped that Lieutenant would not soon be there. And at Christmas, as Ruth and Ed watched television in their basement, the wreath hanging outside their front window was set on fire. The heat from the flames cracked open the window of a boom, And running upstairs, Ed knocked the roof to the ground with a baseball bat, and after stomping on the flames, he grabbed a pair of garden shears and tore off into the night, yelling that he was going to kill the poet. Now, in March, the poet wrote that he was going to kill Ruth at St. Patrick's Day parade, and on April Fool's Day, pieces of concrete were flung on the Finleys' front porch. But neither the neighbors nor Ruth saw anything suspicious. Now, despite the hundreds of hours of diligent police work that Hill, Drowsky, and the other officers had put into Ruth's case, the winter of spring 1981 found them no closer to identifying a suspect. Now, Chief Richard Lemoignon, a highly respected and well-liked administrator, gave his detectives free rein over their cases and faced a constant barrage of questions from the media. Now, why haven't you caught the poet? Are the poet and the BTK strangler the same person? How could this be happening in Wichita? But despite the pressure, Lemoignon resisted any calls to intervene. Now, he had full faith in his detectives' capabilities. Now, unlike his men who had formed close personal bonds with Ruth and Ed, Lemoignon kept both the case and the Finleys themselves at a remove. Then, on Friday, September 4th, 1981, Drowsky appeared at Lemoignon with an update. The poet had sent a new letter in which he announced that after taking care of Ruth, he was going after Lemoignon's wife, Sharon. Now he knew the make of Sharon's car and the path she drove from work. Now, angry and offended, Lemoignon decided the time had come to step away from his preferred administrative role and take a personal interest in the case. And that evening, Lemoignon took voluminous cases files back to his house, and he spent the weekend poring over every document, visualing every incident, making detailed notes, and by the time he finished, he knew the identity of the poet. So, oh my gosh, who could it be? On Friday, September 11th, Lemoignon called a meeting of 16 of his officers in a windowless basement at the county courthouse. The civil preparedness room had been specifically designed to keep city officials safe in case of natural disasters, and Lemoignon wanted to keep the meeting confidential. Now, not one for drama or formalities, Lemoignon took his seat at the head of the table. The poet, he announced with little preamble, is Ruth Finley herself. Now, before his men could reply, Lemoignon began listing his reasons. 1. There had never been a single witness to any of Ruth's encounters with the poet, that they all occurred in public places. 2. The Finleys lived on a dead-end street with little traffic, yet none of the neighbors or station police officers had ever spotted the poet, nor were there any fingerprints ever discovered. 3. Detectives found only a single set of footprints, Ruth's, in the park where she had supposedly maced her kidnapper. She also said her kidnapper had struck her face in with concrete, but her face showed no injury. 4. Ruth called the Central Investigations Office in the police department when she'd been stabbed. Why not emergency dispatches? And she got out of the car to make the call, then back in the car to drive home. How could she do that with a knife in her bag? And Captain Hill received a letter from the poet as he took over Ruth's case, but only Ruth, Ed, and police knew Hill had assumed command. And 6, as soon as the recording camera was placed in the birdhouse, a camera of which only the Finleys and the police were aware, the poet stopped appearing in Ruth and Ed's backyard. And 7, the poet's message to Ed in the Eagle Beacon's classified section stopped whenever the Finleys were on vacation, and resumed as soon as they returned. Now, Ruth was the only suspect who made any sense, Lemoignon told his men. Unless it's Ed. I don't think it is, he said. Lemoignon felt that his lack of personal relationship with Ruth provided him with emotional distance to identify the suspect, or identify her as the suspect, and the friendship that his detective had developed with the Finleys had blinded them to reality. In person, Ruth was too kind, too gentle, too modest, too normal to suspect of such outrageous behavior. The question of whether Ruth was genuinely crazy or just conniving remained to be answered. And during the 3-hour meeting, Lemoignon told his officers they would spend the next 2 weeks performing around-the-clock surveillance on the Finleys, with narcotics and vice officers providing additional support. The officers would work 12-hour shifts, A van situated at the service station in Eastgate Mall shopping centre, 2 blocks from Finley's house, would serve as a command centre. Now Le Mignon warned his men not to breathe a word of the surveillance to anyone, including their spouses. If the media received any tips, he would fire every person in the room. Now, the detectives were stunned by the news that Ruth might be the poet, but they kept their faces impassive. Drowsky in particular was devastated given how close he and his wife had grown with the Finleys. Privately, many of them thought, Le Mignon is deluded. What about all the experts, the doctors, the psychologists, the linguists who had sworn that Ruth and the poet could not be the same person? But Le Mignon, an enormously self-confident man, thought the experts were wrong. I don't believe any of them, and I don't believe anything Ruth says either, he said. So after the meeting, Le Mignon, for the sake of procedure again, asked Dr. Schrag if Ruth could be the poet, but Schrag responded with a vehement no. Now Le Mignon gave the medical reports to his own physician, who agreed with Ruth's doctor that it was physically impossible for Ruth to have inflicted her stab wounds. But still, Le Mignon remained convinced that Ruth and the poet were one and the same. Dear Ruth, the game is over, the players are dead, I play any part coming out of my head. Now on Monday, September 14th, the surveillance of Ruth and Ed began. For the next 2 weeks, police would document Finley's every move. At least 1 police car and 1 helicopter would follow them at all times, and inside the command centre van at Eastgate Mall, 2 officers watched for a camera with a long-range lens. The lens was trained on mailboxes just opposite their vehicle. Now 3 days later, the police helicopter provided their first break. Let me have some water. Three days later, at 8:30 a.m., Ed steered his black Oldsmobile into the Eastgate Mall parking lot and stopped at the mailbox. Ruth reached out the passenger side window, placed the mail in the slot, and Ed drove off. The helicopter police didn't know what he had just witnessed. His instructions had specified that only that he should follow Finley's car at all times, but he notified the officers nonetheless. At 1:30 p.m., 30 minutes before the mail was to be picked up, a postal inspector called by police opened the mailbox and received its contents. And he took the mail to the downtown post office and presented it to Drowsky and a detective from Vice and Narcotics. The detective focused on the 5 pieces of mail lying on top of the mailbag. 1 was a personal letter from the Finleys, 2 were bill payments from the Finleys, and 2 were letters from the poet, 1 addressed to Ruth, and 1 addressed to Cake TV. Hickory Dickory Dock, the latter message read. The name on this face is Smock. Heat the iron for the brand. Cooperate for games planned. Hickory Dickory Dock. Now, police had seen Ruth place letters in the mailbox, and they discovered the poet's letters in the mailbox. But still, this did not prove incontrovertible proof. What if somebody came along after them and mailed those letters? Le Mignon asked. So several days later, on September 26th, the Finleys returned to Eastgate Mall mailbox at 4:15 p.m. Detectives snapped colored photographs as Ruth's arms extended to the passenger window and dropped the letters in the slot. As soon as Ed drove away, undercover police car pulled in front of the mailbox to block anyone else from accessing it. Detectives popped the car's hood and feigned an engine trouble in order to avoid suspicion. Again, the postal inspector was called and the process of retrieving the mail was repeated. And 4 letters from the Finleys were grouped together on top of the pile. A utility bill, a payment to the J.C. Penney's, a personal letter, and a poet letter addressed to Ruth. No dumbass bitch will get the fucking law to get me, the letter read. Now, when the detectives had finished, the postal service resealed the envelopes and delivered the letters on to Ruth and Ed. The 2 bills were sent to their destination, where the police retrieved them in order to establish a chain of evidence. Now, the next morning, the Finleys found the poet letter, and Ed, following the long-established procedure, brought it to the police. Events launched into overdrive. Detectives rushed to the post office and poured through thousands of envelopes at the business to which Finleys had mailed their payments, looking for a match with Ruth's handwriting. Police also swarmed the drop box located in the In the lobby of Ruth's employer, Southwestern Bell, several poet letters were recovered from the box. The same day, detectives, tipped off by a suspicious employee and armed with a waiver from Ruth's boss, Joe Horvath, searched her office at the phone company, and they discovered a book of poetry, a sheet of torn carbon paper with the poet's handwriting, and a red bandana. One of the poet's trademarks, wrapped in a used yellow Kleenex in Ruth's desk. Torn pieces of big chief tablet paper covered with the poet's writing were found in the trash. Now, on Monday, September 28th, the police began the process of obtaining search warrants for the Finley's house. Although the police were now certain that Ruth was the poet, there was still no physical evidence to tie her to the letters. The evidence wouldn't be needed if any charges were to be filed. Now, on Wednesday, Chief Lamignon and his wife Sharon returned from a police convention in New Orleans to find another poet letter waiting for Sharon in their mailbox. The letter had been mailed from Southwestern Bell on Friday, one day before the police began monitoring the mailbox in the company's lobby. The lower half of the page was torn. The next day, microscopic fracture analysis proved that the bottom of the letter perfectly matched a ripped piece of paper found in Ruth's office trash. Analysis also showed that the stamps on the envelopes retrieved from the businesses where Ruth and Ed had sent their bills came from the same cardboard container as the stamp on the poet's recent letter to Ruth. Now, the investigation was complete, with the only remaining question was whether Ed Finley had been involved. So on October 1st, 1:15 p.m., Ed came to the 5th floor of the City Hall, where he'd been told there'd been another poet letter to pick up. The police had always returned the poet letters to the Finleys. Now, Ed was taken to an office in a special investigation section, where he met Captain Hill and Detective Jack Leon, a newcomer to the case. The police had hoped that Detective Leon's fresh perspective would bring an element of objectivity to the questioning, and Hill and Leon brought Ed to a drab, cramped interview room where they read him his rights. Ed was puzzled, but obliging. In his world, the police were always correct, and if they wanted to read him his rights and question him, he wouldn't object. Now, Hill and Leon began interviewing by asking Ed to detail his early years, his childhood, his family, his career as an accountant, and Ed's answers were truthful and concise. And he was equally plain-spoken as Hill and Leon took him step by step through the events involving the poet, beginning with Ed's stay in the hospital in 1977, and culminating the poet's most recent letters. Hill felt confident that Ed had been wholly unaware of his wife's activities. Now, 2 hours into the interview, it was time to reveal the truth. "It's coming down today," Hill told Ed. "I know who the poet is." Now, Ed was thrilled. He had waited years for this moment. "I hope the hell you do," he told Hill, a joyful expression on his face. "Let's go get him." "First, we want you to look at some pictures." Now, Hill presented Ed with the color photographs of Ruth mailing 4 letters from the Finleys' black Oldsmobile at Eastgate Mall. "One of those is a poet letter," he said. "And I can verify she has mailed 5 poet letters in the last 2 weeks. "You have to be kidding," Ed said. "No, I'm not kidding, and I wish the hell I was," Hill told Ed about the materials the police had found in Ruth's office. Now, Ed sat silently, stunned by the news. "Now, the poet is Ruth," Hill said, prodding him. "Oh my God," Ed answered, his voice nearly a whisper. Nothing in his life had prepared him for a moment like this. What was the proper response? "Oh my God." Hill assured Ed that the police weren't mad at Ruth. They simply wanted to make sure she received the help she so clearly needed. "I've hit you with a lot, haven't I?" Hill asked. "You certainly have." Ed's mind was whirling. "The poet is Ruth. The poet is Ruth?" "I have to eliminate you," Hill said, "and the only way I can do that is for you to take a polygraph." And that's fair. Maybe Ruth had written letters, Ed was thinking, but what about the kidnapping and the stabbing, and what about the men who had called the house? Now, Hill drove Ed to the Kansas Bureau of Investigation headquarters on East 3rd Street for a lie detector test. Ed's only request was to stop at a gas station along the way to buy cigarettes. And the test lasted nearly an hour. Ed, as Hill expected, easily passed. Now, with the polygraph complete, a group of detectives, accompanied by Ed, converged on Finley's house, and they discovered a string of items tied to the poet. A book of poems titled Maniac and Other Poems, pencils, pens, letters, carbon paper, a ruler guide, a writing tablet, a piece of red bandana. And Ed's shock was tempered with relief. If Ruth was the poet, if no crazed stalker was out to harm her, then at least she was safe. Now, at 5 p.m. that afternoon, Lieutenant Drowsky greeted Ruth in the lobby of the Southwestern Bell, and he asked if she would come to the station to examine mugshots, a ritual she had performed many times in the past. And as always, Ruth readily agreed, and Drowsky delivered her to the same room where Ed had been questioned just hours before, and Hill and Leon were waiting. Hill, his tone affable, began explaining to Ruth her legal rights, and then as he had with Ed, asking her to walk him through her life, from her childhood up through the events of the poet case. And although Ruth, like Ed, didn't understand why Hill had recited her rights or why he wanted her to rehash such familiar material, she immediately obliged. Now, Ruth, Hill interrupted. As she described the poet's activity, either you or Ed could have done every one of these things. And we've discussed that, Ruth said mildly. We've said, they probably suspect one of us. And after Ruth finished her narrative, Hill decided to change tack. Up until this point, he'd played the friendly, helpful questioner, and now he placed a pile of poet letters on the table. Have you ever written any of these? He asked Ruth, and she said she had not. And what if I called you a liar? Hill said coldly, because I've got evidence that shows you have. His expression was grim. Mike, Ruth cried, shocked by his change in attitude, and Hill pressed on. Now, do you want to keep playing your games? You've got a problem, lady. And when did I mail those letters? Ruth asked plaintively. So Hill showed her the surveillance photo, and Ruth, astounded, said nothing. I'm the poet, she thought. Ruth's body sagged and a vacant look washed over her face, and an image appeared in her mind, and she was sitting in her basement writing a letter. The image was only a fragment, not a full memory, and she wasn't sure if it was real. Hill softened, and he listed the items that were recovered from her office wastebasket. Ruthie. Why? He pleaded. It's time to tell me why. I'm not mad at you, Ruth. I want to know why you are doing this. No, Ruth replied, her voice barely audible. Do you need some help? Yes. Ruth's mind was racing, but her thoughts seemed out of reach. Occasionally a lucid image surged into view, and the rest was confusion. Had she known she was the poet? Hill seemed so confident, surely he wouldn't lie to her. And Ruth had a flash of a red bandana in her hands. And Hill pressed on. Why did you make up a story about the abduction? Sweetheart, why did you do it? I don't know, Ruth answered, her eyes wet. Why did you stab yourself? I don't know. And Hill asked about the assault on Fort Scott when she was 16-year-olds when a man had branded her legs. Had she made that up too? And her tears now flowing, Ruth insisted the attack had been real. And Hill assured Ruth that she wasn't a criminal. I'm not mad at you, he said. I just want an explanation. I don't have one, she said. Now, as Hill continued his questioning, Ruth admitted she had written the poet's letters. She had placed a butcher knife in her office lobby phone booth. She had left the ice pick and the urine and the feces on her porch, and she'd siphoned gas from Molotov cocktails from her car. She said that on the day of her supposed abduction, she'd taken a bus to Twin Lakes, then walked to the river to leave her sweater and shoes for the police to discover. But even as she was recounting these details, Ruth wasn't sure they were real. She was just telling Hill the most logical possibilities. She had no memory of the act she was describing. But Hill was angry and Ruth was terrified of anger, and she wanted to please him, and the only thing she knew for sure was that she had done horrible things because Hill was telling her so. Now, Ruth said she stabbed herself in the car at the summer night at Town East Mall. Now, did you mean to hurt yourself as bad as you did? Hill asked. I don't know, She also didn't know what was going through her mind when she wrote the poet letters, and she didn't know how long it took for her to write them. The only memories she had felt like they belonged to someone else. Ruth, there's no hard feelings between you and me, Hill said. There should be. Ruth shook her head, and when Hill asked her if she'd ever intended to hurt anybody, she said Ed never knew. There's not a nicer person anywhere than he is, she insisted. I can never face him again. And how do you feel, Ruth? Hill asked, reaching over to lift her head so that she would look at him. I wish I was dead. Hill dropped her head so abruptly as it banged the table. Ruth, right now the world has come to an end, but it hasn't. Do you think you need to see a doctor now? I am sure I do, Ruth said, her voice breaking. I must be crazy. No, you're just ill, Hill said. You only have a disease just like any other disease in your body. Now, Hill briefly left the room, and when he returned, he was accompanied by Dr. Schrag, the psychologist who 2 years had hypnotized Ruth. As Schrag entered the room, Ruth dropped her head. Hi, girl, would you look at me? Schrag asked. What would you like to do? Ruth's voice was flat. Go home, just die. My feeling is that if you let someone help, in a few months you'll be back at work and you'll live a very happy, normal life, Schrag told her. Ruth was silent. Then she said she wished Schrag knew the good side of her, because she really was a good person, and Schrag promised her he knew that. I tried to figure out what was wrong, Ruth said, but I couldn't stop it. At 9 p.m. that night, Ruth was put in a squad car with Ed nestled beside her, and she was whisked to St. Joseph's Hospital, placed under a 24-hour-a-day psychiatric watch. Meanwhile, which the authorities were deciding whether to press charges. The case of the poet had cost the police department an enormous sum of $370,000, while some detectives were sympathetic to Ruth's psychological struggles. Others, Chief Lamignon, prime among them, thought she was a criminal and wanted to punish her. But after reviewing Ruth's psychological report, the Sedgwick County District Attorney announced he would not be pursuing criminal persecution because her actions as the poet were, quote, not malicious. So on Friday, October 28th, in 1981, Ruth gave her first public statement confessing to the police. I think I may have died and gone to hell, she said. I think I'm coming back, though. And 7 days later, Ruth entered a twice-a-week therapy with Dr. Andrew T. Pickens, a 38-year-old graduate of St. Louis University Medical Hospital, who was an ardent practitioner of psychoanalysis. Dr. Pickens, who sported an enormous black mustache, viewed the role of the psychiatrist akin to that of a detective. Both searched for clues and for hidden pieces of a puzzle, which would solve a larger mystery, whether psychological or criminal. Now, under Dr. Pickens' care, Ruth began the painful and laborious process of excavating her Depression-era childhood on a farm in rural Richards, Missouri. As part of her therapy, Ruth composed lengthy poems in which she initially found a more comfortable vehicle for expressing her emotions than speaking about them face to face. At first, Ruth told Dr. Pickens that her childhood had been impoverished but normal, and yet the poems she wrote about those years were suffused with images of violence. She kept having visions of a red bandana which, for unknown reasons, filled her with revulsion. And after 3 months of repeated attempts, Ruth and Dr. Pickens uncovered the source of Ruth's true terror. When she was a girl, an adult neighbor and family friend had used a red bandana to tie her up. He took her to his barn and shoved the bandana in her mouth as he assaulted her. The neighbor continued abusing her for almost a year, producing in Ruth enormous feelings of guilt. Her taskmaster parents punished her whenever she ran away or sobbed during the man's visit to the farm, and Ruth grew convinced the abuse was her fault and that she was a bad girl, evil at heart, and that she deserved it, and the man threatened to kill her if she told anyone about her secret. And during the assaults, Ruth dealt with her horror by, as she put it, floating off to heaven, so she could see what was happening to the girl down below, and somehow it wasn't so bad if it wasn't me, I was just watching it. And this is a common occurrence among victims of childhood trauma, clinically known as dissociative disorder. Sufferers experience a disconnect between their identity, consciousness, actions, and surroundings. And this dissociative state allows them to escape reality to hold traumatic experiences at bay. Now, Ruth had kept her memories of her childhood sexual abuse buried for 43 years, until Dr. Pickens believed the stress of Ed's hospitalization for a possible heart attack and the background specter of the BTK strangler had forced her repressed trauma to surface. The branding attack in Fort Scott, Ruth always maintained had been real as well. Ruth had dealt with emotional deluge by creating another self, the poet. It wasn't split personality disorder. The poet was not a fully developed personality, nor an entirely separate identity, but an alternative consciousness, one Ruth had no memory or awareness of when in her regular, conscious mind. And Ruth spent the next 7 years in intensive therapy with Dr. Pickens, slowly working through the torment of her childhood. During these raw, emotional, devastating years, Ed stuck fiercely by her, as did her children and siblings. And though Ruth lost many friends, many others expressed only sympathy for her suffering. Chief Lemon Young, however, remained doubtful. "I think she's lying," he said. "She knew about everything she was doing, and maybe something happened in her childhood, but not what she says." And eventually Ruth felt healed enough to allow her story to be told by a local news station, hoping it would help other survivors. And her hope was well placed. The outpouring from viewers was overwhelmingly positive, erasing for Ruth the lingering disgrace she felt for her actions as the poet. She had, with prodigious effort, and after years of struggle, triumphed over her abuse and achieved the stability she was seeking. Her story, never happy ending, never writing poetry again. And then there's one final image of a taped session between her and Dr. Strad, where it says, this was the hypnosis session that of her going through her past. Let's see, she said, what's happening? I went in the house. All right, go in the house. What? Right there, and what do you see? I didn't see anybody, I heard him. You heard him? What are you hearing? He turned out the light. And how old are you right here? I'm 16. Go on, I'm 16. Go on. And then what happens? Right there, go on. And that is the sign, yeah. Oh my gosh, Mo! Hi! Welcome on in, Raiders. Hello. Oops, put my jacket on. Welcome on in. Oh my gosh. The alert jump scared? Oh dear, we were getting real, cozy with this interesting case. How was your stream? Come on in, Oimo. Guys, for those that don't know Oimo, make sure you check them out. They have incredibly beautiful art. Welcome on in. Welcome to a very cozy stream. There's slugs crawling in. They're cute slugs though. They're cute. We're reading true crime stories, and we just finished reading one about the poet, which turned out to be herself. But these are stories from around the 1970s and 1980s. I'm still personally confused how she stabbed herself, because they were like, well, it's not possible. So then how did she stab herself? But then I'm wondering, did she just ask some random drunk person to do it? I don't know. I don't really understand how she got stabbed. Because there's scientific evidence is very hard to refute. I feel like there might be more to this story, you know? Like, clearly there's something psychologically wrong with the lady, and yes, maybe she wrote the poet stuff, but like, yeah, there's a lot of like incorrect science used here. For example, the polygraph, you know? Like, there's a lot of things that don't add up, but she just had to prop it up and bump into the blade. Do you think that's what she did? She just shoved it in the ground or something and just dived on it? Like, she almost killed herself with it. Like, yeah, no, polygraphs can't be used as evidence. But, And then what happened to the strangler? Oh wait, I didn't introduce myself. Sorry. Welcome on in, Raiders. My name is Elias Delaria, your British VTuber slash goose moved to Japan at your service. Welcome on in. If you fancy staying, feel free to do so. It's very cozy in here. But if you need to go rest or eat or hydrate or do whatever you need to do, please do. That's more important. Rule number 1 here is to look after yourself, okay? And looking after yourself involves, doing what makes you happy. And if being here and chilling with me makes you happy, wonderful. But if it doesn't, that's okay. I'm not everyone's cup of tea. It's cozy as we talk about real life murders, yeah. Oh, wait. They caught the BTK Strangler in 2005. Oh, I see. Skittles, how do you get up with the story tags? Oh dear. Oh, how am I? I'm good. We're cozy. We're reading spooky stories. Is there a story about the BTK Strangler? The BTK Strangler story, perhaps. Oh, no, it's a whole hecking book. Oh, there's a whole book about it. I don't think I'm allowed to read the entire book. My voice is too soothing for the murder, scary, creepy topics. I did wonder about that. Like, I don't really know how to make a scary sound. Okay, this one's more of not really a story, but more of the more about the whole thing. So let's get rid of these ones that are on our screen. It was chilling. Okay, at least it was chilling. It's good. Giving them chill vibes, but like, ooh, chill. Let's see. Okay, I found a... We're gonna discuss the BTK Strangler now, which is the killer in mention of the previous story we just read, who, tried to mimic this person and pretend to be this person. So I think it fits quite nicely if we go into this story next, okay? Okay, let's do this. This is gonna be more of a case file read, okay? So, yeah, it's not gonna have the sort of story-esque feel, but that's okay. So this is about, is it pronounced Rader? Dennis Rader? R-A-D-E-R. I always get worried about names because it's English is difficult. It's never clear which way is to pronounce it. Let's see. Okay. Dennis Rader was the ideal all-American dad. Rader, yeah. The military veteran, married with 2 kids, president of his neighborhood church council, and a leader of the local Cub Scout troop. But beneath his benign exterior, Rader hid a dark secret. For years, he terrorized Wichita, Kansas, as the BTK Killer, a serial murderer whose initials stood for bind, torture, kill. Rader was active from the 1970s to the early 1990s, during which time he had killed at least 10 people. And after a long period of inactivity, he resurfaced in 2004 with a letter he mailed to a local newspaper, which reignited interest in BTK killers' cold cases. Now, Dennis Rader was born in Wichita in 1945, and what seemed to be a normal Midwestern boyhood filled with fishing, comic books, and scout trips. But even from an early age, Rader displayed some disturbing behavior, such as torturing and killing small animals. He later admitted to developing violent sexual fantasies involving bondage during his youth as well. And a decorated Air Force sergeant upon his discharge in 1970, Rader started working for the Coleman Company in 1972. And 2 years later, he found work installing alarm systems for ADT Security Services. After marrying his wife Paula in 1971, they welcomed children Brian and Carrie in 1975 and 1978, respectively. Outwardly, all seemed well, the Rader family. But in 1973, in December, Radar began secretly stalking Julie Otero, a former co-worker from the Coleman Company. Okay, we have some images we can show. Just kidding, it doesn't want me to save it, so we're gonna use good old screenshot. Let me grab this picture for you guys. Let me see, where is it? It's a photograph. Here it is. There's a photograph. Put that right here. Okay. So here's the key events and timeline. On the morning of January 15th, 1974, Radar killed Julie Otero, her husband Joseph, and 2 of their children, Joey and Josephine. All 4 were bound with ropes, and Radar suffocated Joseph and his sons with plastic bags and strangled Julie while their children watched. Radar then took 11-year-old Josephine down into the basement and told her she would be in heaven tonight with the rest of her family. He pulled off her clothes, hanged her from a sewer... Oh, dear. Ew. Hanged her from a sewer pipe and touched himself while she struggled and died. Oh my goodness gracious me. And then a few months later, Radar entered the home of Catherine and Kevin Bright while the siblings were out. Catherine was another former co-worker from the Coleman Company, and Radar later told investigators that he named this murder Project Lights Out, riffing on their last name. When the Brights came home, Radar had Kevin tie up Catherine and then bound Kevin in a separate room. Now Kevin freed himself and struggled against Radar, who shot Kevin, but Kevin pretended to be dead and soon ran out of the house. Catherine fought back as well, but Radar had stabbed her several times, and she died later at the hospital, while Kevin survived. Now in 1974, Radar displayed a hunger for publicity when he sent a letter to the Wichita Eagle, with instructions on finding more information in the pages of a textbook in the public library. Inside that book, he had hidden another letter confessing to the Otero murderers and threatening to kill again. The code words for me will be bind them, torture them, kill them, BTK, which gave rise to his nickname, the BTK Killer. Then Radar stayed quiet for a few years after Paula gave birth to the couple's sons, Brian, but then struck again in 1977. This time, he forced his way into the home of Shirley Vian and her 3 children. After barricading the children in a bathroom, he strangled Vian to death. And Radar's next victim was 25-year-old Nancy Fox. He broke into her house and strangled her with a belt. Radar then used a payphone to call the police and report it as a homicide. So that was the one that was mentioned. The murder of Nancy Fox was mentioned in the previous case that we just read. So the investigation. Now, none of the survivors of Radar's attacks were able to provide police with helpful identifying descriptions. Kevin Bright told investigators that his attacker was an average-sized guy, bushy mustache, psychotic eyes. And in 1978, Radar, again starved for attention, sent a letter to Wichita television station, KAKE, confessing to the 7 Fox. Now, the 7 Fox, Otero, and Vian and Bright murders. In the letter he pleaded, "How many do I have to kill before I get a name in the paper or some national attention?" The next year, investigators released the 1977 recording of Radar's phone call about Fox to the police, but their effort failed to turn up any credible leads. By 1980s, the investigation into the serial killings had largely stalled. And Radar deemed the 1985 murder of his neighbor Maureen Hedge Project Cookie. Radar broke into her house, strangled her to death, and brought her body to the church where he served as president to take photos of her in bonded positions. The following year, Radar initiated Project Piano, in which he stalked a 28-year-old Vicky Wedgler, a local pianist. She allowed Radar into her house because he imitated a Southwestern Bell telephone lineman, and she was then strangled with pantyhose while her 2-year-old child was home. In 1991, Radar also strangled 62-year-old Dolores Davis, his 10th known victim, with her own pantyhose before dumping her body beneath a bridge. Now, despite this series of 10 murders, police were unable to make any progress in identifying a suspect, and by the early 2000s, the murders were considered cold cases. Then, in 2004, as the 30th anniversary of the Ottawa murders approached, the Wichita Eagle ran a headline: BTK case unsolved, 30 years later. Radar read the story because he was, quote, kind of bored, as he later told investigators, and he decided to resume sending letters to the local media. In March 2004, the Wichita Eagle received a letter from a, quote, Bill Thomas Kilman, taking credit for the 1986 murder of Vicky Wedger, and inside the envelope was a copy of her driver's license, which had been stolen at the time of the murder, and 3 photos of her body. And over the next several months, a series of taunting letters, postcards, and packages were sent to various recipients around Wichita, and one letter included a cryptic word puzzle that included clues such as serviceman, follow, prowl, and telephone co. I'm seeing the overlap. I'm seeing the overlap between this case and how the previous case they suspected potentially similarities. It's just a coincidence that both of them worked with telephones at times. Like, And finally, a major break in the case occurred when in a letter to police, Rader asked if it was okay to send files on a floppy disk. Police were told to run an ad stating, Rex, it will be okay. And if it were true, and they did so in the Wichita Eagle. And in February 2005, local television station KSAS received a letter with an enclosed floppy disk. The floppy disk contained messages and some metadata indicating that a deleted document from Christ Lutheran Church was last modified by Dennis. To confirm Rader as a suspect, police obtained a warrant to use DNA testing on a pap smear from Rader's daughter. When that DNA test confirmed familial relationship with a sample found under Wedger's fingernails, police finally had enough evidence to arrest Rader. Okay, so here is another image from the case. So this image is of a mask. Okay, now this is from August 18th and from the Wichita Police Department, Sam Houston, showing a mask which was used in one of the crimes during Dennis L. Rader's sentencing hearing on August 18th, 2005 in Wichita, Kansas. So the legal proceedings. Rader was arrested in February 2005 and was charged with 10 counts of first-degree murder. On the first day of his trial in June 2005, Rader pleaded guilty to 10 murders, which he callously labeled as, quote, projects. Because his murders were committed at a time when Kansas had banned capital punishment, Rader was sentenced to 10 consecutive life sentences. He is currently serving his prison term in solitary confinement at the El Dorado Correctional Facility in Kansas. Now the aftermath. Under questioning, Rader repeatedly declined any involvement in any other crimes, but a significant body of evidence links him to the disappearance of 16-year-old Cindy Kinney from a laundromat in Pawhuska, Oklahoma in 1976. It sounds like he's still alive and in prison, guys. It's actually wild. Among the clues hidden in Radar's letter, journals, and word puzzles are the words Cindy, Kinney, laundromat, and Kihaka, the name of the street on which the laundromat was located. Across the street from the laundromat is a bank that had ADT security systems installed shortly before Kinney's disappearance, and some evidence suggests that Radar had installed the system. Additionally, Radar stated under police questioning that, quote, I always wanted to kidnap a girl from a laundromat. But Radar never admitted to being involved in Kinney's disappearance. Some investigators believed he may be concerned that Oklahoma is a state that allows capital punishment. Now, in 2003, in January, the County Sheriff's Office in Oklahoma stated it was opening a new investigation into Radar's drawings and writings, as well as an anonymous phone call received months after Kinney went missing, which allegedly indicate that Kinney's body may be buried in near an old barn along the Kansas-Oklahoma border. And then we have the public impact. Now, Radar's daughter, Carrie Rawson, wrote a book titled A Serial Killer's Daughter, My Story of Faith, Love, and Overcoming in 2019, and spoke out in 2025 in the 2025 documentary My Father, the BTK Killer. She has stated publicly that she believes her father probably committed more than 10 murders. The BTK Killer's murders highlighted the way that some serial killers, like Ted Bundy, Gary Ridgway, and John Wayne Gacy, hide in plain sight as appearing as average, upstanding citizens. It also showed how many murderers have narcissistic, attention-grabbing tendencies and delight in taunting police by writing numerous letters, like the still unidentified Zodiac Killer, and with clues and puzzles prompting extensive media coverage and public attention. Yeah. Yo. Scary that this person's still alive. Actually wild. Yeah, it sounds like people do be scary. You know, that was interesting. The scariest stories are gonna be that of people, you know? Like, oh yeah, it's like how we have Jack the Ripper in the Fate series. I mean, they pretty much have everyone in the Fate series. I mean, 10 consecutive life sentences. How long is a life sentence? How long is a life sentence in Kansas? Okay. A life sentence in Kansas is typically a, quote, hard 50. So that's 500 years he has. Guys, I don't think he's making it out. Like, yeah. I mean, yeah. He's gonna be so old. He's gonna be 500. I don't think he's gonna live that long. Yeah. Or the possibility would be that they gather enough evidence for like the other kill where capital punishment is permitted, you know? Like, yeah. Yeah, the thing I find scary about life sentences is like sometimes they're not lifelong. Like, what is it? How long is it in England? It can mean like 25 years. Like, and then they're out. And then it's like, wait, well, now they're just older. Like, yeah, it can be 15, 20, or 30 years. And that's not very long. Like, yeah. Yeah, there's been a lot of cases in England where like you see like so one of the ones we got taught at school was this like I can't remember the name of it, but it was these stories of these two kids that like killed another kid and they went to prison. Yeah, but they're out now. Yeah, the James Bulger, the murder of James Bulger. Yeah. That was when it was like two 10-year-old boys, Robert Thompson and John Venables, abducted, tortured, and murdered a 2-year-old boy. And yeah, they were found guilty of abduction and murder, and that made them the youngest convicted murderers in modern British history. And they were sentenced to indefinite detention at Her Majesty's prison and remained in custody until a parole board decided in 2001 recommended their release on a life license at age 18. So, but then Venables was sent to prison again in 2010 for possession of child pornography on his computer, but then released again on parole in 2013, and then went back to prison again in 2017 for again possessing child pornography on his computer. And then in 2023, his appeals for parole were rejected. So like, dude's been like, stop letting him out. Just take it. Stop. Like how stop. Just stop letting him out. Like in England. I can read you guys this story. This story is definitely a true one. I don't know why they go over it in school, but I will grab you the pictures, the CCTV footage. Yeah, and there's this famous image of the two kids. Because I know this case is quite famous in England, but I don't know how far. Yo, why you keep whining about attention from me? What do you want? This is a stream. I give all of you attention. The heck you want from me? You want me to derail my entire heckin' stream topic? Like, what do you want? Oh my god. Holy guacamole. Like, you get direct things when we... Oh my god, she hates us. Wah. Why am I reading stories on my reading story stream? You're all needy children. Oh my god. No, you're not. I can love you guys. You guys are being silly. You silly punks. We're playing Minecraft after soon, right? Yeah. I'm just gonna read everyone this awful, horrific story that was very famous in England. Yeah. This is the... Oh, wait, let me get the... We have the story of this kid. Yeah. Of Britain's youngest convicted murderers. Yeah, bedtime story. So this one is basically what happened was CCTV at the New Strand Shopping Centre in Bootle on 12 February 1993 showed Thomas and Venables casually observing children, apparently selecting a target. The boys were playing truant from their primary school, which they did regularly. And throughout the day, Thompson and Venables were seen shoplifting various items, including sweets, batteries, a troll doll, a can of blue Humbrol modelling paint. And one of the boys later said that before they abducted Bolger, they were planning to abduct a child, lead him into a busy road alongside the shopping centre, and push him into oncoming traffic. But that same afternoon, 2-year-old James Bolger from Kirkby was at New Strand Shopping Centre with his mother Denise. And at 15:40, while in AR, Tim's butcher's shop on the lower floor, Denise momentarily let go of James's hand to pay for her shopping and discovered he was missing. Thompson and Venables had approached Bolger, taken him by the hand, and led him out of the shopping centre. And this act was caught on CCTV at 15:42. So that's the CCTV footage we have. Thomas and Venables took Bolger to the Leeds and Liverpool Canal, about a quarter mile, so 400 metres, from the New Strand shopping centre. There, they dropped him on his head, causing facial injuries, and joked about pushing him into the canal. An eyewitness later described Bolger at the canal as crying his eyes out. The boys took Bolger on a 2.5-mile, 4-kilometre walk across Liverpool, during which they were seen by around 38 people. However, most bystanders did not intervene. When questioned, Thompson and Venables claimed that Bolger was either their brother or a lost child. They were taken to the police station. At one point, the boys took Bolger into a pet shop from which they were ejected. Eventually, the boys arrived in Walton. With Walton Lane Police Station across the road, they hesitated, but then led Bolger up a steep bank to a railway line near the former Walton and Anfield railway station. And one of the boys threw the blue plate they shoplifted earlier into Bolger's left eye. They kicked him, stamped him, threw bricks and stones at him. They forced batteries into his mouth and dropped a 10-kilogram, a 22-pound railway fish plate on Bolger, resulting in 10 skull fractures. Pathologist Alan Williams concluded that Bolger sustained a total of 42 injuries, none of which could be identified as a fatal blow. Thompson and Venables laid Bolger across the railway tracks and weighted his head down with rubble. Their intention was for a passing train to strike him to make his death appear accidental. The body was severed by a train after they had departed the scene. Bolger's remains were discovered by 4 boys looking for a football 2 days later. and forensic examination later determined that Bulger had died from injuries before being struck by the train. So upon discovering Bulger's body, police had suspected sexual assault as Bulger's shoes, socks, trousers, and underpants had been removed, but the pathologist's report, read out in court, noted... Noted, when questioned about the attack, Thompson and Venables were reluctant to provide details, and years later, after release, his psychiatrist, Susan Bailey, reported his continued denial of any sexual element to the crime. And the police investigation quickly yielded low-resolution video footage showing the two unidentified boys abducting Bulger from the Newstrand shopping centre. One boy, detained for questioning but later released, was forced to flee the city with his family due to threats from vigilantes. The breakthrough came when a woman, upon seeing enhanced images of the two boys on national television, recognized Venables. She recalled seeing him that day playing truant with Thompson in the Bootle area, and her call to the police led directly to their arrest. So forensic tests confirmed that both boys had the same blue paint on their clothing as found on Bulger's body. Both had blood on their shoes. The blood on Thompson's shoe matched to Bulger's through DNA profiling. A pattern of bruising on Bulger's right cheek matched with the features of the upper shoe of a shoe worn by Thompson. A paint mark in the toe cap of one of Venables' shoes indicated he must have used some force when he kicked Bulger. Thompson is said to have asked the police if they had taken Bulger to hospital to get him alive again. The boys were each charged with murder of James Bulger on 20th February 1993, and they appeared at the South Sefton Youth Court in 22nd February 1993, where they were remanded in custody to await trial. In the aftermath of their arrest and throughout the media accounts of their trials, the boys were anonymized as Child A and Child B. In awaiting trial, they were held in secure units where they would eventually be sentenced to be detained at Her Majesty's pleasure. Oh my... Yeah, this I remember is like... This one's definitely a true story. I don't know why they taught this in my school. Oh my gosh. I remember I think they taught this in my school to show us how evil humans could be. Like, because that's them at the time of like it happening. Like the fact that they were just kids. I think we had to cover this story in our philosophy class. Yeah. So it showed, the evil of people. It was the idea of like nature and nurture of like the evil nature of human beings. And that this is like a case to demonstrate that kids are also extremely capable of horrific crime, you know? So for the trial, up to 500 protesters gathered at Magistrates Court in the Metropolitan Borough of Sefton during the boys' initial court appearances. The full trial opened at the Sessions House, Preston on 1st November 1993 and was conducted as an adult trial with the accused in the dock away from their parents and the judge and court officials in legal regalia. The boys denied the charges of murder, abduction, and attempted abduction. The attempted abduction charge related to an incident at the Newstrand shopping centre earlier on 12 February 1993, the day of Bulger's death. Thomas and Venables had attempted to lead away another 2-year-old boy, but had been prevented from doing so by the boy's mother. That's also terrifying. Like, I think another thing that we went over was like how scary this is in that it almost happened to someone else, and the fact that it did happen to someone else, and that, you know, I think we had to discuss like feelings of the mother, feelings of like the other mother that almost had their kid abducted, like, yeah. Now each boy sat in view of the court on raised chairs so that they could see out of the dock designated for adults, and were accompanied by 2 social workers and guards. Although they were separated from their parents, they were within touching distance when their families attended the trial. News stories reported the demeanor of the defendants. These aspects of the trial were later criticized by the European Court of Human Rights, which ruled in 1999 they had not received a fair trial by being tried in public in an adult court. At the trial, lead prosecution counsel Richard Honriques successfully rebutted the principle of Dolly Incapax, which presumes that young children cannot be held legally responsible for their actions. Thompson and Venables were considered by the court to be capable of mischievous discretion, meaning an ability to act with criminal intent as they were mature enough to understand that they were doing something seriously wrong. A child psychiatrist, Eileen Vizard, who interviewed Thompson before the trial, was asked in court whether he would know the difference between right and wrong, and that it was wrong to take a young child away from his mother, and that it was wrong to injure a child. Vizard replied, "If the issue is on the balance of probabilities, I think I can answer with certainty." And Vizard also said that Thompson was suffering from PTSD after the attack on Bulger. Susan Bailey, the Home Office's forensic psychiatrist who interviewed Venables, said unequivocally that he knew the difference between right and wrong. Now, Thompson and Venables did not speak during the trial, and the case against them was largely based on more than 20 hours of tape-recorded police interviews with the boys, which were played back in court. Oh, they have, Yeah. Thompson was considered to have taken the leading role in the abduction process, though it was Venables who had apparently initiated the idea of taking Bulger to the railway line. Venables later described how Bulger seemed to like him, holding his hand and allowing him to pick him up on the meandering journey to the scene of his murder. Lawrence Lee, who acted as a solicitor for Venables during the trial, later said that Thompson was one of the most frightening children he had ever seen, and compared him to the Pied Piper. After his appearance in court, Venables would strip off his clothes, saying, "I can smell James like a baby smell." And the prosecution admitted a number of exhibits during the trial, including a box of 27 bricks, a blood-stained stone, Bulger's underpants, and the rusty iron bar described as a railway fish plate. The pathologist spent 33 minutes outlining the injuries sustained by Bulger. Many of those to his leg had been inflicted after he'd been stripped from the waist down. Brain damage was extensive and included a hemorrhage. The boys, by then aged 11, were found guilty of Bulger's murder at the Preston court on 24th November 1993, becoming the youngest convicted murderers of the 20th century. Wait, what's the youngest of the 21st century then? Wait, hold up. The judge, Mr. Justice Moreland, told Thomas and Venables they had committed a crime of unparalleled evil and barbarity. "In my judgment, your conduct was both cunning and very wicked," and Moreland sentenced them to be detained at Her Majesty's pleasure with a recommendation that they should be kept in custody for very, very many years to come, recommending a minimum term of 8 years. At the close of trial, the judge lifted reporting restrictions and allowed the names of the killers to be released, saying, "I did this because the public interest overrode the interests of the defendants." There was a need for an informed public debate on crimes committed by young children. David Oman later criticized this decision and outlined the difficulties created by it in his 2010 review of the probation service handling of the case. So post-trial, shortly after the trial, after the judge had recommended a minimum of 8 years, bear in mind they're only 11, so 8 years would only take them to 19. Lord Taylor of Gosforth, the Lord Chief Justice, recommended the two boys serve a minimum of 10 years, which would then make them eligible for release in February 2003 at the age of 20. The editors of The Sun had handed a petition bearing nearly 280,000 signatures to Michael Howard, their Home Secretary, in a bid to increase the time spent by both boys in custody. This campaign was successful, and Howard announced in July 1994 that the boys would then be kept in custody for a minimum of 15 years. Meaning that they would not be considered for release until February 2008, by which they would be 25 years old. Lord Donaldson criticized Howard's intervention, describing the increased tariff as institutionalized vengeance by a politician playing to the gallery. The increased minimum term was overturned in 1997 by the House of Lords that ruled it unlawful for the Home Secretary to decide on the minimum sentence for young offenders. The High Court of Justice and European Court of Human Rights have since ruled that although Parliament may set a minimum and maximum term for individual categories of crime, it is the responsibility of the trial judge, with the benefit of all the evidence and argument from both prosecution and defence counsel, to determine the minimum term in individual criminal cases. Tony Blair, then Shadow Home Secretary, gave a speech in Wellingborough, during which he said, "We hear of crimes so horrific, they provoke anger and disbelief in equal proportions. These are ugly manifestations of society that is becoming unworthy of that name." And Prime Minister John Major said that society needs to condemn a little more and understand a little less. The trial judge, Mr. Justice Moreland, stated that exposure to violent videos might have encouraged actions of Thompson and Venables. This was disputed by David McLean, the Minister of State at the Home Office at the time, who said the police found no evidence linking the case with, quote, video nasties. Some British tabloid newspapers claimed the attack on Bulger was inspired by the film Child's Play 3, depicting the doll Chucky being splattered with blue paint during a paintball game. And this led to campaigns for tighter regulations on video nasties. Police investigations found that Child's Play 3 was among the films that Venables' father had rented in the months prior to the killing, but there was no evidence that Venables himself ever watched it. Investigators reviewed some 200 titles rented by the Venables family and concluded that there was nothing, no scene or plot or dialogue, where you could put your finger on the freeze button and say that influenced the boy to go out and commit murder. Inspector Ray Simpson of the Merseyside Police commented, "If you're going to link this murder to a film, you might as well link it to the Railway Children." Despite the police's findings, the intense public debate surrounding social media influence contributed to the Criminal Justice and Public Order Act of 1994, which clarified rules on the availability of certain types of material to children. And then, following the trial, Thompson was detained at Barton Moss Secure Children's Home, which was then known as Barton Moss Secure Care Centre in Salford. Venables was detained in Vardy House, a small 8-bed unit at the Red Bank Secure Unit in Newton-le-Willows in Merseyside. These locations were not publicly known until after the boys' release. Details of the boys' lives were recorded twice daily on running sheets and signed by a member of staff who'd written them. The records were stored at units and copied to the officials at Whitehall. The boys were taught to conceal their real names and the crimes they committed, which resulted in their being in the units. Venables' parents regularly visited their son at Red Bank, just as Thompson's mother did every 3 days at Barton Moss. The boys received education and rehabilitation. Despite initial problems, Venables was said to have eventually made good progress at Red Bank, resulting in him being kept there for the full 8 years, despite the facility only being a short-stay remand unit. Both boys were reported to suffer PTSDs, and Venables in particular told of experiencing nightmares and flashback of the murder. So in 1999, lawyers for Thompson and Venables appealed to the European Court of Human Rights that the boys' trials had not been impartial since they were too young to follow proceedings and understand adult court. The court dismissed their claim that the trial was inhuman and degrading treatment, but upheld their claim that they were denied a fair trial by the nature of the court proceedings. The court also held that the Home Secretary's intervention had led to a highly charged atmosphere, which resulted in an unfair judgment. On 1999, 15th March, the court in Strasbourg ruled by 14 votes to 5 that there had been a violation of Article 6 of the European Convention of Human Rights regarding the fairness of the trial, stated the public trial process in an adult court must be regarded, in the case of an 11-year-old child, as a severely intimidating procedure. So in September 1999, Bulger's parents appealed to the European Court of Human Rights but failed to persuade the court that a victim of the crime has the right to be involved in determining the sentence of the perpetrator. The European court case led to the new Lord Chief Justice Harry Wolff reviewing the minimum sentence, and in October 2000 he recommended the tariffs be reduced from 10 to 8 years, adding that Her Majesty's Young Offenders Institution was a, quote, corrosive atmosphere for juveniles. And so in 2001, in June, after a 6-month review, the parole board ruled that Thompson and Venables were no longer a threat to public safety and could be released, as their minimum tariff had expired in February that year. Home Secretary David Blunkett approved the decision and they were released a few weeks later on a life license after serving 8 years. It was reported that Thompson and Venables were given new identities and moved to a secret location under a witness protection-like program. This was supported with the fabrication of passports, national insurance numbers, qualification certificates, and medical records. Blunkett added his own conditions to their license, insisted on being sent daily updates on their actions. The term of their release incurred the following. They were not allowed to contact each other or Burgos' family. They were prohibited from visiting the Merseyside region. Curfews were imposed on them, and they were obliged to report to the probation officers. If they breached the rules or were deemed a risk to the public, they would return to prison. A court injunction was imposed on the media after the trial, preventing the publication of the details about Thompson and Venables. The worldwide injunction was kept in force following the release on patrol, so their new identities and locations could not be published. In 2001, Blunkett stated, the injunction was granted because there was a real strong possibility that their lives would be more at risk if their identities had been known. So, there were some later developments, but it's wild that they were like, nah, you're safe, just stay away from the area it happened. As if it couldn't just happen in another area. Like, I'm sorry, I didn't realize this was a Maryside specific kind of thing. But don't worry, they're not allowed there. Like, hello? So they have some later developments. They have mentions of the divorce of Jane Bulger's parents. They had Bulger's memorial and legal activism. So in March, oh my gosh, that made me jump. Honk, 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 honk. Oh, that made me jump so badly. Oh my gosh. Malik Denif, arigato. So regarding the youngest convicted killers of 20th century, a quick look shows a 7-year-old boy got convicted in the US but not charged in 2022. And even that one is not the youngest in history. Them kids be vicious. Yeah, this is a very, very, very special case, I believe. So on March 14th, 2008, an appeal to set up a Red Balloon Learner Centre in Merseyside in memory of James Bulger was launched by his mother and Esther Ranson. A memorial garden in Bulger's memory was created in the Sacred Heart Primary School in his hometown of Kirkby, the school he would have expected to attend had he not been murdered. In March 2010, a call was made by the England's Children's Commissioner to raise the age of criminal responsibility from 10 to 12. She said that the killers of James Bulger should have undergone programs to help turn their lives around rather than be prosecuted. The Ministry of Justice rejected the call, saying that children over the age of 10 should know the difference between bad behavior and serious wrongdoings. In 26 February 2020... Oh, wait, this is recent. Wait. 2026. Wait, this is February this year. A woman walking her dog near Kirkside Cemetery reported 2 smashed cherub statues next to Bulger's headstone, the incident being investigated by the Merseyside police. Denise Fergus launched a GoFundMe to raise funds for repair. Why would they vandalize Bulger's grave? The heck is wrong with people? Like, this year? People are so disappointing. Like, yeah. Oh gosh. Okay, so there were early reports about prison life. The Observer revealed that both Venables and Thompson had passed their GCSEs and A-levels during their sentence. The paper also stated that Bulger's family lawyers had consulted psychiatric experts in order to present the parole panel with a report that suggested Thompson was an undiagnosed psychopath, citing his lack of remorse during the trial and arrest. The report was ultimately dismissed. However, Thompson's lack of remorse at the time, in stark contrast to Venables, led to considerable scrutiny from the patrol panel. Upon release, both Thompson and Venables had lost all trace of their Scouse accents. And in a psychiatric report prepared in 2000 before Venables' release, he was described as posing a trivial risk to public and unlikely to reoffend. The chances of his successful rehabilitation were described as very high. Now, the Manchester Evening News published details that suggested the names of the secure institutions in which the pair were housed in breach of the injunction against publicity that had been renewed early 2001. In December that year, the paper was fined £30,000 for contempt of court and ordered to pay costs of £120,000. No significant publication or vigilante action against Thompson or Venables has occurred. Despite this, Bulger's mother, Denise, told how in 2004 she received a tip-off from an anonymous source that helped her locate Thompson. Upon seeing him, she was paralyzed with hatred and unable to confront him. In 2007, documents released under the Freedom of Information Act 2000 confirmed the Home Office had spent £13,000 on an injunction to prevent a foreign magazine from revealing the new identities of Thompson and Venables. And then there's false identification and internet trolling. So in April 2010, a 19-year-old man from the Isle of Man was given a 3-month suspended prison sentence for falsely claiming in a Facebook message that one of his former colleagues was Thompson. In passing sentence, Deputy High Bailiff Alistair Montgomery said the teenager had put that person at significant risk of serious harm and in a perilous position by making the allegation. In March 2012, A 26-year-old man from Chorley, Lancashire, was arrested after allegedly setting up a Facebook group with the title, "What Happened to Jamie Bulger Was Fucking Hilarious." The man's computer was seized for further investigation. And then there's more about internet photo posts. So we have on 25th February 2013, the Attorney General's office announced that it was instituting contempt of court proceedings against several people who had allegedly published photographs online showing Thompson and Venerable as adults. A spokesman commented, "There are many different images circulating online claiming to be Venables or Thompson. Potentially innocent individuals may be wrongly identified as one of the two men and placed in danger. The order and its enforcement is therefore intended to protect not only the Venables and Thompson, but the members of the public who have been incorrectly identified as being one of those two men." On April 26, 2013, two men received suspended jail sentences of 9 months after admitting to contempt of court by publishing photographs that they claimed to be Venables and Thompson on Facebook and Twitter. The posts were seen by 24,000 people, and according to BBC legal correspondent Clive Coleman, the purpose of prosecution was to ensure the public was aware that internet users were also subject to the law of contempt. And on... oh gosh, they'd be arresting a lot of people from heckin' Twitter here. On 27th November 2013, a man from Liverpool received a 14-month prison sentence for posting images on Twitter claiming to show Venables. On a contempt, C-O-N-T-E-M-P-T. I'm not very good at pronunciations. So on 31st January 2019, a man and woman pleaded guilty to 8 contempt of court offences at the High Court after they admitted to posting photos on social media that they claimed identified Venables. Both received suspended prison sentences. In March 19th, actress Tina Malone was given an 8-month suspended prison sentence for posting Venables' alleged identity on Facebook. And in January 2020, a 53-year-old woman from Ammanford in South Wales received a prison sentence of 8 months, suspended for 15 months. In November 2017, she had published an alleged photograph of Venables on Facebook with the advice, quote, "Share this as much as possible." Lord Justice Nigel Davis said the offence was close to the line for an immediate prison sentence, but suspended the sentence after observing an early admission of guilt and remorse by the woman. And then there's the trolling and stalking of James's mother. So on July 14th, 2016, a woman from Margate in Kent was jailed for 3 years after sending Twitter messages to Bulger's mother in which she posed as one of his killer and as Bulger's ghost. And this sentence was reduced to 2.5 years on appeal. And then on the 25th of October in 2016, a man was jailed for 26 weeks for stalking Denise Fergus. He had previously received a police warning for stalking her in 2008. Yeah, I'm not sure why someone, like, it's people clearly have nothing better to do. Yeah. Okay, so now we have the later life of John Venables, where, shortly before his 2001 release, when aged 17, Venables was allegedly to have slept with a woman who worked at the Red Bank secure unit where he was held. In 2011, in the aftermath of his 2010 imprisonment, these allegations were outlined in a Sunday Times Magazine article written by David James Smith, who had been following the Bulger case since the 1993 trial, and again later in a BBC documentary titled John Venables, What Went Wrong. The female staff member was suspended for sexual misconduct, and she never returned to work at Red Bank. A spokesman of the St. Helens Council denied that the incident had been covered up, saying all allegations were thoroughly investigated by an independent team on the orders of the Home Office and chaired by Arthur de Furschling, a retired prison governor. And then we have the misdemeanors while on release in 2002 and 2008. So Venables began living independently in March 2002. Sometime thereafter, he began a relationship with a woman who had a 5-year-old child. It is not known whether Venables had already begun downloading child abuse images at the time of dating the woman, although he denies having ever met the child. And after a period of apparently reduced supervision, Venables began excessively drinking, taking drugs, and downloading child abuse images, as well as visiting Merseyside, which was breach of his license. In 2008, Venables was arrested on the suspicion of a fray following a fight outside a nightclub. He claimed he was acting in self-defense, and the charges were later dropped after he agreed to go on an alcohol awareness course. 3 months later, he was found in possession of cocaine. He was subjected to a curfew. In 2005, when Venables was aged 23, his probation officer met another girlfriend of his who was aged 17 after a number of, quote, young girlfriends. It was presumed that Venables was having a delayed adolescence. In 2008, the new probation officer said Venables spent a great deal of leisure time playing video games on the internet. Dude, imagine you're playing a video game, you're playing hacking whatever, and this evil punk is on the enemy team. Oh my god. Like, this would be, or if they were on your team, that would be, that would be okay to just run it down. Like, oh my gosh. And then in 2010, Venables contacted his probation officer in February 2010, reporting that he feared his new identity had been compromised at his place of work. When the officer arrived at his flat, Venables was attempting to remove or destroy the hard drive of his computer with a knife and a tin opener. The officer's suspicions were aroused and the computer was taken away for examination, leading to the discovery of child sexual abuse material, which included children as young as 2. And on the 2nd of March 2010, the Ministry of Justice revealed that Venables had returned to prison for an unspecified violation of the terms of his license release. Justice Secretary Jack Straw stated that the Venables had been returned to prison because of extremely serious allegations, and stated he was unable to give further details of the reasons for John Venables' return to custody because it was not in public interest to do so. And then on March 7th, media reports that he'd been accused of offences related to the possession of child sexual abuse material. Now, in a statement to the House of Commons on the 8th of March in 2010, Straw reiterated that it was not in the interest of justice to reveal why Venables had been returned to custody. Baroness Butler Sloss, the judge who had made the decision to grant Venables anonymity in 2001, warned that Venables could be killed if his identity was revealed. Bulger's mother, Denise Fergus, said she was very angry that the parole board did not tell her Venables had been returned to prison, and called for his anonymity to be removed if he was charged with a crime. A spokesperson with the Ministry of Justice stated there was a worldwide injunction against publication of either killers' locations or new identity. Venables' return to prison revived a false claim that a man from Fleetwood, Lancashire, was Venables, and while the claim was reported and dismissed in September 2005, it reappeared in 2010 and circulated widely via text message and Facebook. Child Inspector Tracy O'Gara of the Lancashire Constabulary stated an individual who was targeted 4.5 years ago was not John Venables and has now left the area. It's actually crazy that this guy is like, just put him in prison, just keep him in prison, just keep him in prison. Like, surely, like, why? I don't understand. So on June 21st, 2010, Venables was charged with possession and distribution of indecent images of children. It was alleged that he downloaded 57 indecent images over a 12-month period into February 2010 and had allowed other people to access the files through a peer-to-peer network. Venables then faced 2 charges under the Protection of Children Act, and on July 23rd, Venables appeared at the court hearing at the Old Bailey via a video link, visible only to the judge hearing the case. He pleaded guilty to the charges of downloading and distributing child sexual abuse material and was sentenced to 2 years imprisonment. At the court hearing, it emerged that Venables had posed in an online chat room as 35-year-old Donnie Smith, a supposedly married woman from Liverpool who boasted about abusing her 8-year-old daughter in hopes of obtaining further child sexual abuse material. Why is this only 2 years? The heck? I had so many hecking questions. Like, what? Like, the judge, Mr. Justice David Bean, ruled that Venables' new identity could not be revealed, but the media were allowed to report that he had been living in Cheshire at the time of his arrest. The High Court also heard that Venables had been arrested on suspicion of a fray in September 2008 following a drunken street fight with another man. Later that year, he was cautioned for possession of cocaine, and in 2010, review of National Probation Service handling the case found probation officers could not have prevented Venables from downloading the child sexual abuse material. Harry Fletcher, the Assistant General Secretary of the National Association of Probation Officers, said that only 24-hour surveillance would have stopped Venables. Venables was eligible for parole in July 2011. On 27th June 2011, the parole board decided that he would remain in custody and his parole would not be considered again for at least another year. Okay, so in 2011, on May 4th, it was reported that Venables would once again be given a new identity. And following that was described a serious security breach, which revealed an identity that he had been using before his imprisonment in 2010. Details of the breach could not be reported for legal reasons. A spokesman for the Ministry of Justice commented, "Such a change of identity is extremely rare and granted only when the police assess that there is clear and credible evidence of a sustained threat to the offender's life and release into the community." The incident occurred after a man from Exeter posted photographs on a website devoted to identifying pedophiles, allegedly showing Venables as an adult and revealing his name. Why are they working so hard to protect this guy? Like, that's the scary part here is the justice system. I'm just saying. Okay, so 2013, parole, hearing, and release. In November 2011, it was reported that officers had decided that Venables would stay in prison for the foreseeable future, as he would be likely to reveal his true identity if released. A Ministry of Justice spokesman declined to comment on the reports. On 4th July 2013, it was reported that the Parole Board for England and Wales had approved the release again of Venables. And then on the 3rd of September 2013, it was reported that Venables had been released from prison. Okay, so now we go forward to 2017. On 23rd November 2017, it was reported that Venables had once again been recalled to prison for possession of more child sexual abuse imagery. The Ministry of Justice declined to comment on the reports. On the 5th of January 2018, Venables was charged with unspecified offences relating to indecent images of children. On 7th February 2018, Venables pleaded guilty to possession of indecent images of children for a second time. He pleaded guilty via video link to 3 charges of making indecent images of children, 1 possessing a, quote, pedophile manual that included advice for would-be child molesters and included instructions on child grooming and evading detection. He was sentenced to 3 years and 4 months in prison. In September 2020, he was denied parole. And on the 13th December 2023, Venables was again denied parole, with the parole board saying this panel was not satisfied that release at this point would be safe for the protection of the public. I just, this case is hanging insane. 2019, legal challenge to lift anonymity refused. So on the 4th of March 2019, Bulger's father Ralph lost the legal challenge to lift the lifelong order protecting Venables' anonymity. Judge Andrew McFarlane turned down the request, saying that the uniquely notorious nature of the case meant there was a strong possibility, if not probability, that if his identity were known, he would be pursued, resulting in grave and possibly fatal consequences. Oh no, that would be terrible. Oh no. Oh no. Oh, you're right. Dang. Like, I'm being so heckin' sarcastic here. Like, okay. And then we have potential overseas resettlement. In late June 2019, it was reported that British officials had considered resettling Venables in Canada, Australia, or New Zealand due to the high cost behind protecting his anonymity. British authorities had reportedly spent £65,000 in legal fees to keep Venable's identity a secret. Why are we spending money on this guy? Back to prison. Not to Australia. We don't do that anymore. Like, I don't think Australia wants him. Oh, God. In response to media coverage, New Zealand Prime Minister remarked that due to his criminal history, Venables would need an exemption under the New Zealand Immigration Act of 2009 and that he should not bother applying. I mean, fair. Why would any country want him? Like, keeping people in prisons costs a lot of money. Yeah, but this isn't just prison. This is like additional cost for like identity coverage, you know? Like, on top of the normal cost of prison. Yeah. Oh, there's a 2026 update, guys. 2026 parole hearing. In January 2026, it was reported that Venables would have a new parole hearing. Denise Fergus was granted permission to attend the hearing. Okay, there's no result of the hearing here, guys. Yeah. Like, what the heck? Yeah, that's an ongoing story. So, yeah. To be continued? Question mark. Someone asked how old. How old are they now? So John Venables is 43 years old. Currently. So, and was 10 years old when he killed James Bulger, who was 2 years old. So, yeah. He is still alive. Somehow has been in and out of prison a kabillion. I don't know why they keep giving him chances. Like, yeah. Let me see how the current hearing is. So there has, I guess the parole hearing, we haven't heard anything. Like, yeah. So this apparently, yeah, his latest bid for freedom is currently being heard by the parole board. But like, surely it's straight up, nah, mate. Like, you're a danger to society. There's no possible way you can look at this case and be like, oh yeah, no, he'd be fine. No, like I am myself a very naive and trusting person, but I'm not that stupid. Like, you know, how many chances can you heckin' give a person? Like, the fact they gave him so many chances and proved that said chances were like, you know, yeah. It's crazy. Like, actually crazy. Yeah, I like giving people chances, but this one's no. Like, yeah. I don't know. This has multiple levels of horror. So the horror of the justice system, but also the horror that I think the main horror of this one is the fact that children of the age of 10 were capable of doing such a horrible act. You know? Like, that is just insane. You know? And that they get to just exist as like normal people, you know, that have done their GCSEs and done their A-levels and worked jobs, dude, like the fact that this guy's had girlfriends, Like, there's so many levels of just insane. Like, yeah, there's just, we, yeah, it's just, it's a very scary case. And it's one that is very, I don't even know why it should be, I don't know why it should be controversial in that, like, you know, the dude's 43 years old, just keep him in prison at this point. Like, yeah. So, I don't know. It's just, we're talking about how crazy just everything is. He had girlfriends that had kids, which is just like, I don't know. I don't know. It's just, I think the scariest part is that they're just like able to be on like parole and exist. Like the fact that this, like, you know, they were just living normal lives in England, you know, working a job, having a girlfriend, like doing their day-to-day thing. But like heckin' evil, right? Yeah, I know my school used to talk a lot about like what is evil and how we define evil. And it's a very fascinating case because yeah, it's like, why are these kids evil? Were they just born evil? Like, am I evil? No. Like, I mean, we're setting the bar really hecking low here. With these guys, like, yeah, it's just, yeah, I don't know. I know this was a very, very prominent case in England, and I guess still kind of is, in that, like, you know, the fact that there's no list of, like, there's no, like, record of whether that, the happier ending would be right now if that parole said denied, but the fact it said January 2026 parole and doesn't give me the results is kind of like, you know, I'd like the results, please. Oh, you can see the let's see. Yeah, they haven't really. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Scary. Scary. Stop giving this guy identities. Stop wasting money. Spend money on nice things. Like VTubers. Stop spending money on these punks. Oh god. Like, it's crazy. It's I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how they get away with so much. But yeah, okay, those were some fun stories of today. I didn't expect it to take 3 hours, but my voice is dying. Yeah, I need to review. I'll review the stuff that was also suggested as well. Oh, wow, Swiftstar! Arigato for the 1,000 pennies. Spend money on VTubers, got it. No, but you're not the British court system. Oh gosh, it was fun. Did you guys have fun? Was it fun? 네,楽しいね. 楽しい. I mean, do you guys feel like better people now? Cause like, the bar is really heckin' low for, you know, if you don't think you're a good person, you're definitely a hecking angel compared to these guys. So, you know, feel better about yourself. The bar is in hell. You know, like, there are truly, truly, truly evil people out there, and don't worry, you're not that evil. Not that that's a challenge. Please don't be that evil. You just feel bad for being the same species. Yeah. Yeah, same. But I usually feel bad for being the same species in general. But that's why I became a goose. So, yay! Don't worry, I'm not. I'm a goose now. Hit, 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 hit. Femi-san, arigato. I don't think you left at any point. Wait. But I want to. Wait, what? Wait. What? What? What does that mean? I'm confused. My brain just died. What? What? Oh, yeah, I do need bathroom. I do need bathroom indeed. How did you know? But yeah, did you guys enjoy this sort of like spooky story, scary story reading? I'm like, again, piloting ideas throughout, you know, each sort of week, where this is like potential idea that can stay for like Saturdays. Yeah, but this is a pilot of almost like we could also include, like, we used to do SCP every week, so I feel like making it like spooky Saturdays, we can do like SCP ones, true story ones, those kind of things where it's a reading stream, but it's whether you guys want more of these, you know. Yeah, we gotta have that scary story time. You guys, how do you get those serial killer Saturdays? Here we come. You're like, what? Well, two of the cases today were serial killers. Like, yeah. We can go through stuff. We'll see if you guys like it. Let me know. And Psycho Saturdays, yo, real. The diving into the absolute mess of what is a human being, and the state of some people's minds is, and truly, the horror that is just being a human. Indeed, it'd be scary out there. It'd be scary. Yeah, no need for horror stories. People be here. Me, I'm so scary. Whoa. You scared of this socially anxious shut-in? I actually been doing okay with forcing myself outside, actually, so not too bad. Oh gosh, I need to, like, I didn't go outside today. I slept. Oh my gosh, I've been sleeping a lot. I went on Minecraft in the morning. But yeah, my friend went outside, but I was like, ooh, it's Saturday. I don't want to go outside when it's Saturday, you know, because there's a lot of people out. But yeah, I will be touching grass Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Wish me luck. Wish me luck. And yeah, we have a stream tomorrow, and in the evening we're gonna be watching Freerun season 2. It's gonna be a YouTube members one. I'm gonna pause the adverts, so don't worry about those. Yeah, and what'd you call it? Next stream will be Thursday, which I know feels like forever. How many episodes we were watching? However many we can. However many we can. Yeah. But yeah, I have this little 3-day trip. It's another one that's been planned for a while. So you'll be pleased to hear it involves going to an onsen. So I will relax, I will chill, because, you know, I've been stressed, super stressed. I'll talk about it more in members only. Let me snooze this. Snoozed, yeah. I'll talk about more tomorrow. Yeah. And am I gonna be okay? No, but I'm gonna post stuff while I'm away. Don't worry, I won't forget my medication because I got my Miffy mini travel pill box and it's adorable. Yeah. Yeah, we will be back on Thursday. I'll also do like a fun, wait, is it next week? Fun announcement. Wait, is that next week? No, week after. It was for Easter. Yeah. Out. Blake, you got up with 100 biddies. Thank you. Stress be gone, Ellie. I feel better, beam. Happy you're relaxing. Thank you. It is things are. I've been really excited for something. I think I mentioned I can give vague details. So like there's like the big thing in April that I've been planning that I've been like super excited for, and that's kind of got quite messy and it's very stressful, and that's the thing. Yeah, there was supposed to be something really awesome in April, but it's not looking good right now. And I'm just hoping I'm not getting screwed over. But yeah. We shall see. Oh. No worries. Bless, my friend was like, are you gonna be okay? I'm still gonna be out for another hour. Because I asked her to bring me Family Cheeky. Wait, no fooling anyone this year? Wait, what does that mean? Yeah, that's what it is. Well, yeah, I'll make myself something. April Fools? Oh! No, it wasn't for April Fools. It was for like mid to late April. This is a really big project that I've been working on and put a lot into, a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of effort, and right now it's circling the drain in a very scary looking manner, and I'm terrified and I'm worried. And I just hope I'm not being screwed over because I'm, quote, not big enough or something of the sort. I forgot April Fools existed. Yeah. Should I plan something for that? Oh gosh. So yeah, I just gotta work hard. Fingers crossed I can bring you guys the cool project, and if not, I'll find another way to do it. And then there's other issues happening with like other things that I'm planning where I can't go into it, but yeah, it's stressful. It's stressful, but we do as we do. Let's see, let's zoom in. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, hello. Okay, for now, it is not a bye-bye, okay, because bye-byes suck. So I would like to very selfishly request that it be a see you later, if that's all right. Please keep an eye out for my schedule. I'll post it on all my socials. And yeah, please don't forget me. I'm begging you. Please don't forget me. Yeah. Okay. Have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, good night, wherever you are. Giving you all of the honks, all of the boops, all of the mwah. Daisuki da yo. Daisuki. Uwa.